Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 14, An Exchange Between Geniuses. Wharton was stunned by this sudden news. Wharton truly wanted to be able to openly wed Nina in the imperial capital, rather than elope with her. "Coiling, is this information of yours true?" Linley stared at Coiling, asking urgently. Coiling nodded solemnly. "Master Linley, although His Imperial Majesty hasn't publicly proclaimed it yet, this information came from my father's conversation with His Imperial Majesty. Master Linley, I trust you can judge for yourself the authenticity of this news." Linley nodded slightly. There was no need for the Imperial left Premier to lie to his own son. And, given Linley's spiritual energy as an Archmagus of the 9th rank, if Coiling were currently lying, Linley should be able to sense something. "No matter what happens, we brothers would like to thank you for your assistance, Coiling," Linley said in thanks. Only now did Wharton's mind become clear again. He too said gratefully towards Coiling, "Coiling, thank you for notifying us. No need to thank me. I just hope that in the future, Nina will have a happy life. All right, I need to leave." Coiling bowed slightly towards Linley and Wharton, then left. Wharton watched Coiling leave, then suddenly turned towards Linley. "Big bro. What should we do?" Wharton's mind was in chaos. "What should we do?" Linley spoke with absolute conviction. "For now, we immediately begin moving the household out of the imperial capital." Linley stared coldly in the direction of the imperial palace. "We are out of options. I will immediately instruct people to speak with Yale and have him come. Right now, we'll have to use the secret channels of the Dawson conglomerate to take Rebecca, Lena, Jen, and Uncle Hillman's family members out of the imperial capital. And, ideally the Emperor must not discover that they've left. In truth, it wouldn't be too big of a deal even if the Emperor did find out. Even if Emperor Johann was suspicious of Linley, so what? Would he dare to offend Linley? He himself was not the war god, after all. And even if he dared to offend Linley, who under his command was actually capable of dealing with Linley? That very day, Linley invited Yale over. After discussing the issue for quite some time with Yale, Yale immediately slapped his chest and promised, "Third bro, don't worry about it. It's just a few people. There definitely won't be any issues." Yale then laughed. "Actually, third bro. Even if the Emperor found out, he would pretend he didn't know." Linley smiled as well. He had reached the saint level. Although the status of the Emperor was very high, Linley didn't have any fear of the man. In truth, the only person Linley was afraid of was that man who was residing on War God Mountain. "Still, try to avoid being discovered," Linley instructed. Although Jen, Rebecca, and Lena were reluctant to leave, they knew that they would meet again with Linley's group later, and thus they followed the directives of the Dawson conglomerate and quietly left the imperial capital. Actually, Linley and Wharton hadn't given up all hope yet. They hoped that on March 15th, Emperor Johann would choose Wharton at the Martial Palace. Although the chance was very low, it was still possible that Emperor Johann might change his mind. After all, Nina eloping with Wharton meant parting with her family. As for Wharton, he, housekeeper Hyrie, and Hillman had all become very comfortable and used to living in the imperial capital. Unless it was absolutely necessary, they didn't want to take the final step. Each day passed, and March 15th drew nearer as well. The streets, hotels, and restaurants of the imperial capital were once again filled with discussion regarding Wharton, Bloomer, and their older brothers. Everyone was trying to guess who would be the one to wed the imperial 7th princess. The hoped-for day of March 15th finally arrived. That morning, a rare snowstorm actually descended on the imperial capital early in the morning. Even though the sun came up at 7 or 8, it was still hard to see anything farther than 10 meters away. "Whew." Standing outside his manor, Wharton let out a long breath. These past few days, he had been under a lot of mental pressure. Enough. We'll know the answer today. Relax. Linley laughed, clapping Wharton on the shoulder. Wharton turned his head to look at his older brother. Looking at Linley, Wharton felt as though Linley were his strongest source of support. With Linley there, Wharton felt a sense of confidence. Right. Wharton nodded strongly. Linley and Wharton immediately got on their carriages, heading in the direction of the Imperial Palace. Because of the snowstorm, the carriages advanced very slowly. In addition, there were many carriages heading towards the Imperial Palace this day. At the gates of the Imperial Palace, one carriage after another stopped at the gates, and the various nobles exited their carriages and exchanged pleasantries with each other. Lord Olivier has arrived. Seeing Olivier and Bloomer walk out of the carriage together, many of the nobles and ministers outside the gates welcomed them warmly. Seeing the nobles and ministers walk towards him as soon as he left the carriage, Olivier couldn't help but frown. Second brother, let's go inside. Olivier didn't so much as glance at the nobles as he emitted a wave of force from his body, directly pushing aside the oncoming nobles and senior ministers, yet not harming them in the slightest. The nobles and ministers all exchanged glances. They couldn't help but be surprised. Your lordship, we've arrived. A carriage driver's voice rang out, and then Wharton and Linley exited the carriage. This time, the nobles and ministers very wisely did not try to draw too near. They just called out words of welcome at a safe distance. Linley and Wharton didn't pay too much attention to those nobles either, heading directly for the palace. Linley. Olivier came to a halt, turning his head and bidding Linley welcome. Olivier. Linley still felt a degree of respect towards a powerful rival such as Olivier. Nobody could reach such a level of power without focusing for many years on painstakingly training oneself. Linley, Wharton, Olivier, and Bloomer walked forward in a line, heading towards the martial palace together. Linley, that day, at the Colosseum, to be honest, I really wanted to keep fighting with you. A friendly smile appeared on Oliver's face. Oh? Then why did you give up the chance? I refuse to believe you were afraid of Hateson. Linley said with a calm laugh. Olivier and Linley had both sensed each other's power. Although that day, they had been forced aside by Hateson, aside from Hateson's power, one of the main reasons they had been forced aside was because they had not yet allowed their attacks to explode at full power. It wasn't that I was afraid of Hateson. It was more that, challenging Hateson was the goal I set for myself 6 years ago. After mastering the obsidian sword, I absolutely must challenge him. Olivier glanced at him. At the Colosseum, I very much hope to continue to do battle with you. But this battle must come after my battle with Hateson. I don't want to let Hateson know the secrets to my obsidian sword technique. If I were to battle you with it, wouldn't I be exposing myself to him? A hint of a smile was on Oliver's face. I really want to see if the monolithic sword saint Hateson, famed for his defensive abilities, can withstand my attack. Linley nodded. In the duel between myself and the monolithic sword saint roughly a month from now, who do you think will win? Olivier suddenly asked. Linley paused for a moment. That day, Linley had seen the layer of flowing black energy on the obsidian sword's blade. It gave off a very strange sensation. Linley was very confident in his own adamantine heavy sword, but he wasn't necessarily confident in his ability to withstand his opponent's blow. It's possible for either you or the monolithic sword saint to win. But I think the monolithic sword saint, Hateson, has a higher chance of winning. After all, in all these years, no saint-level expert has been able to beat him. For him to be able to accomplish such a feat means that he surely has some power to rely on. Linley said impartially. Olivier nodded. Right. I admit, 6 years ago, when I dueled with Hateson, he only revealed a portion of his true power. Hateson, his power is unfathomably deep. but I am filled with confidence towards my obsidian sword as well. No matter how strong his defense is, he shouldn't be able to withstand it." Linley laughed. How could it be that this Olivier was so similar to him? He himself had that same sort of confidence in his adamantine heavy sword. "What sort of attack does your obsidian sword possess? Why are you so confident in it?" Linley asked curiously. Olivier laughed. "My obsidian sword." Olivier looked at Linley. Pausing for a moment, he said, "I can tell you this. You should know by now that the technique of my obsidian sword is based on my insights into the elemental laws of darkness." Linley nodded. "Thus, in addition to astonishing penetrative power and attack power, my obsidian sword also possesses a spiritual attack," Olivier said directly with confidence. "Spiritual attack?" Linley was shocked. Darkness-style magic did indeed include spirit-based curses. The elemental laws of darkness included all sorts of soul-related properties. But for Olivier to be able to develop a spiritual attack with his obsidian sword based on his insights into these laws was indeed astonishing. Perhaps the ordinary, physical attacks of the obsidian sword are very easy to defend against, but the assault on the spirit, ordinary defenses are virtually useless against it. "I want to see how Hate-Sun can block it." As Olivier spoke, a look of excitement appeared on Bloomer's face as well. Linley had to admit. The obsidian sword was indeed very terrifying. How frightening! To directly attack the spirit, Linley was amazed at the power of this technique as well. The more powerful one's spirit is, the greater the chance that they will be able to block this attack. But warriors generally do not have very powerful spiritual energy. Even saint-level warriors usually don't have as much spiritual energy as an archmagus of the 9th rank. Olivier was very confident. Warriors had far less spiritual energy than magi of the same rank. This technique was aimed precisely at the weak point of warriors. "Linley, what about the attack for your technique?" Olivier asked as well. Bloomer also looked at Linley. Right now, a hint of arrogance was in Bloomer's eyes. He was certain that Linley wouldn't be able to match up to his big brother. Linley didn't try to hide anything. He said directly, "My technique with the adamantine heavy sword also renders exterior defenses useless. It directly strikes against the internal organs in the opponent's body. Renders defenses useless." Oliver's face changed. Generally speaking, experts would slowly build up their spiritual energy. On the path to gaining insight into the laws, their rate of growth in spiritual energy would increase rapidly. For example, Hate-Sun's spiritual energy should be able to match an archmagus of the 9th rank. But the internal organs were different. Although it was easy to train one's muscles, it was extremely hard to train the heart or the intestines. They could only absorb a little bit of elemental essence, which would slightly fortify the heart and the organs. If one's organs were destroyed, one would definitely die. Renders exterior defenses useless and strikes directly at the insides of the body. Olivier felt admiration in his heart towards Linley as well. This sort of attack was simply too bizarre, yet Linley had managed to develop it. Linley similarly felt admiration towards Olivier. The obsidian sword was able to attack someone's spirit. The nobles and ministers behind them, upon seeing Linley and Olivier chatting on seemingly amicable terms, couldn't help but feel surprised. Soon, Linley and the others arrived outside the martial palace. Linley and Olivier glanced at each other, then led their younger brothers into the martial palace together. Actually, even though they had described their ultimate attacks to each other, the attacks would still be very hard to defend against. Both the spirit and the internal organs were definitely vital points. This was why these two geniuses were so confident, and why they weren't afraid of telling their rival their secret. "So what if I tell you? Let's see if you can do anything about it." Quite a few people were gathered in the martial palace. Upon Linley and Warden entering the palace, a palace attendant immediately walked over. "Lord Linley, His Imperial Majesty has already arranged a seat for you. Please take a seat over there. Ordinary ministers had to remain standing, but Linley did not. Linley calmly sat down, while Olivier was also led to a seat by a palace attendant. The eyes of the various nobles and ministers in the palace were all focused on Linley and Olivier with a hint of respect and dread. Linley, who do you think His Imperial Majesty will select? Olivier chatted casually with Linley, as though those watching nobles and ministers weren't present at all. My younger brother Warden, of course. Linley said directly. Olivier glanced at Linley. I don't think I agree. Oh, His Imperial Majesty has arrived. Linley and Olivier both looked towards the palace gates. At that moment, a number of palace attendants, the Empress, the Imperial consorts, and 7 princesses entered the palace alongside His Imperial Majesty. Emperor Johann. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 15, The Results. The entire martial palace fell silent. Seeing Emperor Johann arrive, Linley and Olivier both rose to their feet. In the martial palace, the emperor had the highest rank. They had to at least give the emperor some face. Warden's gaze fell upon Nina. Nina was behind her mother, the empress. As soon as she entered, she looked at him. Big lunk, Nina's mouth moved, but she didn't speak. Warden squeezed out a smile of his own, but his eyes were firm. The two knew what the other was thinking from the gaze they shared. No matter who Emperor Johann selected today, Warden wouldn't give up. Nina is mine. Nobody can take her from me. Warden glanced at Bloomer from afar, then turned to look at His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Johann. Your Imperial Majesty. All the nobles and ministers in the palace fell to one knee, bowing respectfully. Arise, all of you. Emperor Johann turned to look at Olivier and Linley, saying modestly, Linley, Olivier, please, take your seats. Warden also stared at Linley from afar. With Linley there, Warden felt the utmost confidence. Emperor Johann then turned to look at the Empress and his imperial consorts. All of you, you can sit over there. Nina, sit with your imperial mother. The Empress, the imperial consorts, and the 7 princesses all sat on the other side of the palace, where a row of seats had been arranged. In the O'Brien Empire, the Empress and the consorts were not permitted to get involved in politics. In the martial palace, even the Empress could only sit below and watch. Today is a very important day. Haha, we expect many of you have been waiting for this day. Indeed, today, we are going to announce who will be the one to marry our beloved daughter. Emperor Johann smiled towards Nina as he spoke. Linley, Olivier, and everyone else stared raptly at Emperor Johann. Warden felt his heart begin to thump loudly. Who would it be? Himself? Or Bloomer? As for who we will select, before we make the announcement, we would like to introduce 2 of the personal disciples of the war god. Emperor Johann saw the 2 figures flying in this direction from far away. Both men were dressed in long blue robes. Upon entering the martial palace, the first one nodded towards Bloomer. Your Imperial Majesty. Only then did the 2 men greet Emperor Johann. The expression on Warden's face changed. The personal disciples of the war god. Seeing these 2 arrive, Warden sensed that things were not going to go well. Bloomer, not too far away from him, cast Warden a delighted glance. These 2 had clearly come in support of Bloomer. We shall make some introductions, first. This person on the left is Mr. Lank Lanke, a personal disciple of the war god and a saint-level expert. Emperor Johann said in a loud voice. This person on the right is Mr. Castro Chi Xi Hong Shi, a personal disciple of the war god and a saint-level expert as well. The nobles and ministers in the martial palace all made gestures of respect towards the 2 saint-level experts. Lank, Castro, please take a seat over there, near Linley and Olivier. Emperor Johann said with a smile. Lank, Castro, Linley, and Olivier were all seated together. Wharton cleared his throat. Right now, he truly felt under a great deal of pressure. The atmosphere was clearly in favor of Bloomer. At this moment in time, Emperor Johann spoke. "Bloomer, Wharton. Come to the middle." Emperor Johann said in a clear voice. "Yes, Your Imperial Majesty." Taking a deep breath, Wharton forced himself to stop thinking wild thoughts, then headed to the center of the palace. Bloomer and Wharton stared at each other coldly, then stood shoulder to shoulder. Everyone's attention was focused on these two. "We are going to announce who shall become Nina's husband. Naturally, that's only if you two both desire to marry Nina. We shall ask you one more time, do the two of you both wish to marry Nina?" Emperor Johann said in a solemn voice. This was the final moment. Bloomer immediately said, "Your Imperial Majesty, my greatest desire and dream is to be able to take Princess Nina as my wife." Wharton said respectfully, "Your Imperial Majesty, it is also your servant's dream that I can have an open, public marriage ceremony with Nina, and that the two of us shall be together forever, never to be apart." As Wharton spoke, he looked at Nina. Nina was looking at Wharton as well. Their gazes met. Most of the people in the palace noticed this, and Bloomer's face sank. "Ha ha, wonderful." Emperor Johann laughed loudly. "Since both of you are so sincere, we are very gratified. But in the end, we must choose one person." As he spoke, Emperor Johann cast a smiling glance at Bloomer. This glance immediately dissipated the rage in Bloomer's heart. He could sense what Emperor Johann's hidden meaning was, and Bloomer suddenly felt confidence. Who would be chosen? To the contrary, Wharton was growing anxious as he looked anxiously at Emperor Johann. "Everyone, please be quiet. We solemnly announce that Wait. That personal disciple of the war god, Castro, stood up and spoke out, preventing Emperor Johann from speaking. Emperor Johann looked questioningly towards him. If it had been someone else who had interrupted him, he would have shouted in anger already. But the person stopping him was Castro. "Your Imperial Majesty." Castro actually headed towards Emperor Johann, in the middle of the palace. All of the nobles and ministers were stupefied. "There is something I must tell you in private, Your Imperial Majesty." As he spoke, Castro glanced at Bloomer. The palace attendants didn't know whether they should try to block him or not try to block him. "Step aside. Castro has something he wishes to discuss with us." Emperor Johann instructed his attendants to step aside, and Castro walked directly to Emperor Johann's side. Emperor Johann looked at Castro quizzically. Castro whispered a few words quietly into Emperor Johann's ear. Emperor Johann frowned, glancing at Castro. But then Emperor Johann started, and a smile appeared on his face. Castro stepped away. "What is this Castro doing?" Linley had a very bad feeling about this. Could it be that Castro is privately asking Emperor Johann to select Bloomer? In Linley's heart, he truly hoped that his younger brother would have a perfect marriage. But there was nothing that could be done about it. Behind Bloomer was the might of the War Gods College. "Ha ha." Just then, Castro had a minor matter to discuss with us. "Now, we shall officially announce that our daughter shall be wed to." A smile was on Emperor Johann's face. The entire palace was so silent, you could hear a needle falling. Wharton and Bloomer both looked anxiously at Emperor Johann. "Shall be wed to," Emperor Johann proclaimed loudly. "Wharton Baruch. Wharton Baruch. Wharton Baruch. Wharton Baruch." Wharton's name echoed throughout the martial palace. The entire martial palace became utterly still. Bloomer's eyes bulged out. Wharton was stunned. Nina was stupefied as well. "Ah!" Wharton suddenly let out a wild howl of excitement, then charged directly towards Nina. Nina recovered as well, throwing herself directly into Wharton's embrace. Warden and Nina actually tightly embraced each other, there in the martial palace, as though no one was watching. Nina was utterly thrilled. Impossible. Bloomer shook his head non-stop, totally unable to accept this result. In truth, Bloomer didn't feel too much affection towards Princess Nina. But Bloomer had a strong, possessive nature, wanting to possess the best of everything. And when he was young, people would often compare him against Warden. Thus, Bloomer wanted to surpass Warden in every way. Challenging him to a duel. Wooing Nina. They were all for this reason. The only person Bloomer truly loved was himself. Warden. Nina. Emperor Johan's voice rang out. Only now did Warden and Nina come to their senses. This was the martial palace. Nina's face turned red, and she immediately retreated into her imperial mother's embrace. Warden immediately bowed as well. Your Imperial Majesty, your servant was too excited. We can understand. We can understand. Emperor Johann laughed and nodded. And then, Emperor Johann looked at Bloomer. Bloomer, you and Warden are both outstanding talents. Only, we have to consider what is best for our daughter. Do you understand? What could Bloomer do? He wasn't Warden. In Bloomer's heart, even if Princess Nina became his wife, she would still be nothing more than something for him to show off. He didn't have much affection for Nina herself. Although it was hard for Bloomer to accept this defeat, he didn't lose his composure. I understand the difficult choice your Imperial Majesty had to make. Bloomer could only grind his teeth and force out these words, swallowing the bile that had risen to his throat. Emperor Johann nodded with satisfaction. Ha ha, Emperor Johann laughed loudly. We are extremely happy today. How about this? Let us decide the date for Warden and Nina's engagement. Next month, on the 12th Warden, that will be the date of your engagement ceremony with Nina. Do you have any objections? Thank you, your Imperial Majesty. Your servant has no objections. Right now, Warden was all smiles. How could he have any objections? Linley, standing next to Warden, felt very happy as well upon seeing his little brother's joy. His little brother's romantic relationship was about to come to a happy conclusion. At last, he was confident it wouldn't turn out like his own had. Thinking once more about how his own had turned out, Linley felt a bit of pain in his heart. Linley, congratulations. The personal disciple of the war god who sat next to him, Lank, said in a warm manner. Castro laughed as well. Master Linley, on War God Mountain, I am a big collector of stone sculptures. I've always been full of admiration for you, Master Linley. If you have some free time, Master Linley, please come to War God Mountain for a stroll. War God Mountain welcomes you at any time. I will definitely go when I am free. Linley was in a fine mood today as well. Olivier directly rose to his feet and walked to his little brother, Bloomer, patting Bloomer on the shoulder. Linley, Warden, today you shall enjoy a meal with us, what do you say? Emperor Johann's voice rang out. Olivier, Bloomer, Castro, Lank, you should come with us as well. Castro and Lank rose to their feet. Your Imperial Majesty, we have affairs we need to attend to back at War God Mountain. We won't be able to accompany you. Castro said. That's fine. Emperor Johann didn't try to force the issue. Your Imperial Majesty, I also need to go prepare for my duel with Hadesun next month. My second brother shall accompany me back as well. Olivier also refused. Bloomer had already lost. How could he stay and have a meal with them? Emperor Johann understood this and nodded. But Linley and Warden accepted Emperor Johann's invitation. In the future, Emperor Johann would be Warden's father-in-law. They had to give him this bit of face. I didn't expect this. Linley's face was covered with smiles. Indeed, he truly had not. Linley had already sent out Jen, Lena, and Rebecca from the imperial capital, and was already prepared to take Nina by force and let Nina and Warden elope. But the end result had actually been this. This truly was surprising. After the court was adjourned, Nina left alongside the Empress and the imperial consorts. But Linley and Warden followed Emperor Johann to a different place. Big brother. Warden's face was still covered in smiles. He was simply too happy. Without meaning to, he continued to beam happily. Linley was very happy for Warden as well. Linley, in the future, we'll all be one family. Emperor Johann laughed towards Linley. Right. All one family. Linley smiled back. Lank and Castro were flying in the air side by side, heading straight for the War God Mountain outside the imperial capital. What was that all about? What did you say to Johann? Lank was confused this entire time. Why did Emperor Johann choose Warden? Emperor Johann had previously already agreed to choose Bloomer. I told Johann that our master, the war god, was ordering him to choose Warden. Castro said in an unhappy voice. Master. Lank was stunned. How should I know? Right after I entered the palace, Master's voice rang out in my mind and instructed me to speak with Johann. And then, Master delivered the same message to Johann as well. Castro said helplessly. Master most likely was afraid that if he simply spoke to Johann, Johann wouldn't believe that it truly was the war god who was speaking to him. After all, Master has never spoken to Johann mentally before. Why did Master do such a thing? Lank said quizzically. How should I know? Castro had no idea either. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 16, Congratulatory Gift. The imperial palace was under heavy guard, and valiant knights could be seen everywhere, along with beautiful palace-serving ladies. Emperor Johann and Linley walked side by side, with Warden slightly behind them. Behind these three men were a number of palace attendants and serving ladies. All of the soldiers they encountered on the trip over bowed respectfully upon seeing Emperor Johann. That is Master Linley. Many warriors, seeing Linley walking by Emperor Johann's side, began to murmur quietly amongst themselves. Their eyes were filled with veneration and adoration towards Linley. They were all young, and many of them were no older than Linley. Many of the young men in the empire had set Linley as their goal towards which they would strive. The O'Brien Empire lives up to its name of being the most military powerful of the 6 major powers. All of these warriors in the imperial palace are very powerful. On the way over, Linley noticed that not a single one of the warriors here was weaker than the 6th rank. Most were of the 6th, and many were of the 7th. Even a few 8th rank warriors could be seen. Even the ordinary patrolling guards were so powerful. One could imagine how powerful the empire as a whole was. Linley, look. The eyes of those guards are lighting up when they see you. I'm afraid that in their hearts, the veneration they feel towards you is greater than for us. Emperor Johann said with a loud laugh. Linley laughed calmly. Ever since that duel in the Colosseum, Linley's fame had spread throughout the O'Brien Empire, especially given his young age. He had already become a legend. Linley was in his 20s, and not only a genius sculptor, but also a genius magus and a saint-level warrior. In the hearts of many, even though they might not be as talented as Linley, as long as they worked hard, they might be able to reach at least 10% of Linley's accomplishments, and they would be happy with that. This had actually caused many young people in the empire to train even more painstakingly. The O'Brien Empire had a long-standing custom that whenever a genius appeared, the empire would officially spread the news alongside the rumors of the common folk. The impact on the citizens of the empire was actually quite large. The imperial flower garden. There was a banquet table filled with food, and the only people seated there were Emperor Johann, Linley, and Warden. The palace serving maids brought plate after plate of delicacies forward, while the guards around them kept a solemn watch around them. You can all leave now. Emperor Johann waved his hand. Yes, your Imperial Majesty. The surrounding maids, servants, and guards all dispersed. Soon afterwards, only Emperor Johann, Linley, and Warden were present. Emperor Johann glanced at Warden. Actually, on the entire trip over from the Martial Palace, his heart was filled with questions. Why did the war god wish to help Warden? In the Empire, the war god was unquestionably the highest power. Warden was nothing compared to him. The war god and Warden most likely didn't have much of a relationship. Could it be that our venerable ancestor, the war god, has some sort of connection to the ancestors of the Dragon Blood Warrior clan? That shouldn't be the case either. 5,000 years ago, when the empire was founded, the Dragon Blood Warrior, Baruch, was very famous, true, but they were nothing more than peak stage saint-level combatants. There was still a major gap between them and the war god. What sort of relationship could the two possibly have had? Emperor Johann didn't believe it. The war god was someone on the level of the high priest. How much of a relationship could he possibly have had with Baruch? Even if he had one, could it have been a deep enough relationship that he would help out the descendants of Baruch, 5,000 years later? Warden. Emperor Johann didn't think about it any longer. Smiling, he said, a while later, you and Nina will get engaged. You need to take good care of Nina. This child has the temper of a spoiled princess. We hope you can be accommodating towards her. Warden straightened his chest, hurriedly saying, Your Imperial Majesty. Don't worry. But Linley was staring at Emperor Johann. A few days ago, Kalen said that Emperor Johann was going to choose Bloomer, but now, Linley was puzzled about this. Linley asked directly, Your Imperial Majesty, I wish to ask, why is it that you chose my younger brother Warden? Emperor Johann was a bit startled. Haha, Emperor Johann laughed loudly. Linley, didn't we already discuss this at the palace? We were considering things from Nina's standpoint. Nina likes Warden, after all. We are deeply gratified that we are able to bring Nina happiness. Linley snickered secretly. If Emperor Johann really were considering things from Nina's standpoint, then when Warden had asked for her hand in marriage, he wouldn't have delayed and caused a large chain of events to occur before accepting. Emperor Johann saw the look on Linley's face. What? You don't believe it, Linley? I don't fully believe it, actually. Linley said bluntly. Emperor Johann started. Generally speaking, who would dare speak to him in such a way? But the one who said these words was Linley, a peak stage saint-level expert. Emperor Johann let out two awkward chuckles. Actually, we admit that we had originally been considering Bloomer. That was more like it. Although that had been Linley's first time meeting with Kalen, he had the feeling that Kalen was a trustworthy person. Linley, you should know that in reality, it is saint-level experts which determine the rise and fall of an empire. Emperor Johann sighed. Saint-level experts can easily kill the enemy's leaders despite being surrounded by 1,000,000 soldiers. Saint-level magi can utilize destructive forbidden spells and destroy a 1,000,000-man army entirely. It can be said that in the eyes of ordinary people, saint-levels are absolutely invincible experts. Linley nodded. When he was young, saint-levels were indeed the ultimate combatants in existence. Although we are the emperor, we do not dare issue orders to saint-levels. If we were to offend them, they might leave the empire. We trust there are many places which would welcome a saint-level expert's arrival. Emperor Johann laughed bitterly. Linley understood this. If a saint-level expert were to flee, given their flying ability, that would be very simple. Both Bloomer and Warden are likely to reach the saint level in the future. But the critical issue is, Bloomer belongs to the War Gods College. All of the experts of the Empire are clustered around the War Gods College. We do not wish to anger the War Gods College. After all, there is an entire group of saint-level experts there, not just one or two. An entire group of saint-level experts. Just hearing the words was enough to make people shiver. With multiple fellow apprentices of Bloomer coming to speak on his behalf, we didn't have a choice. Emperor Johann shook his head and sighed. Then why did you choose my younger brother Warden in the end? Linley asked. He had been wondering about this the entire time. What was the reason? Emperor Johann turned a puzzled gaze towards Linley and Warden. Linley. Does your Baruch clan have some sort of historical relationship with the war god? The war god. Linley immediately understood. Shocked, he said, Your Imperial Majesty, are you saying that it was the war god who caused you to select Warden? Of course. Emperor Johann said, Linley, think about it. In the Empire, whose word carries even more weight than the members of the War Gods College? Only the War God, the highest power of the land. Our venerable ancestor, the War God, directly spoke to us mentally and ordered us to choose Warden. A hint of excitement was in Emperor Johann's eyes. This was the first time we have ever heard the voice of our venerable ancestor, the War God. The War God. It had actually been the War God. The War God was an incredible figure. 5,000 years ago, he had battled the high priest over the Yulon River to a standstill, proving that he was definitely a deity-level combatant. After 5,000 years, although no one had ever seen the War God fight again, everyone understood that given the War God's natural talent, he was undoubtedly even more terrifyingly powerful now. The War God had trained incredibly fast, going from ordinary person to deity level in just a few centuries. His sudden rise to prominence 5,000 years ago had caused his fame and glory to completely eclipse even the four supreme warriors, becoming the most brilliant shining star of that era. The War God helped my little brother. Linley couldn't understand it. Could it be that he knows my side has 6 saint-level experts? Linley began to wonder. Given the War God's power, he definitely could sense the strength of Linley's forces. Linley shook his head. Impossible. To a deity, saint-level experts were nothing. Most likely, the War God could kill all 6 of them with one blow. Then what's the reason? Could it really be because he had some relationship with the ancestors of the Baruch clan? Linley truly didn't understand what the reason was behind the War God's actions. West of the imperial capital. War God Mountain. Aside from the primary peak, there were 4 other peaks. Connecting 2 of the peaks was a natural cave tunnel. Lank and Castro were walking side by side in the tunnel. After traveling several hundred meters through the winding tunnel, the tunnel suddenly turned downwards sharply. If one stared downwards into that bizarre, deep dark hole, not a single thing could be seen. Nobody could tell how deep that tunnel was. Whoosh! Lank and Castro jumped directly into the deep hole. They fell down at a fairly slow speed. After falling for several thousand meters, the two landed as gently as leaves on the ground. From the entrance of the tunnel to this hole was merely 1,000 meters, but this hole took them several thousand meters underground. Master usually spends his time in closed-door training, and whenever he does so, he'll usually spend several years, several decades, or even longer training. When he is engaged in training, he'll virtually never speak to us mentally. But this time, at the Martial Palace, he actually reached out to us mentally and told us to tell Johann to choose Warden, then told us to come back here. Lank was mystified. This was very contrary to the War God's habits. There were very few matters in the world which an ascetic such as War God would issue orders about. Junior apprentice brother, don't think about it too much. Master surely has his reasons for acting like this. All we need to do is listen and obey. Castro said. Yes, senior apprentice brother. Lank nodded. To the disciples of the War God's College, the commands of the War God were not to be flouted. They would do whatever the War God ordered them to do. There was no need to think about it. Rumble, a blistering heat could be sensed in the depths of the tunnel. As they walked in, the stones were slowly turning red as well. The temperature here was very hot. After going several hundred more meters, Lank and Castro came to a halt in front of a pitch-black stone door. The stone walls surrounding this door were already scarlet red, and the temperature was so high that even Lank and Castro had to use their battle chi on their feet to protect themselves. If a piece of paper was tossed out, it would most likely instantly be set alight. "You've come." A calm voice drifted out from behind the door. The war god's voice was very soft, but it carried a penetrative power. The voice was like a needle, piercing directly into one's soul. Castro and Lank, his two disciples, even suspected that the war god could possibly dissipate their soul with his voice alone. This was one of the reasons why Castro and the other personal disciples of the war god feared their master so much. The war god was simply too powerful. "Yes, master," Castro and Lank said respectfully. Castro continued, "Master, what instructions have you for us?" The war god's voice rang out yet again. "April 12th will be the day of the engagement ceremony for that kid Warden. Go speak to your eldest apprentice brother and acquire an interspatial ring. On the day of that kid Warden's engagement ceremony, give it to him as his engagement present." Castro and Lank were utterly stunned. The war god was giving an engagement present? This had never happened before. Even when they, his personal disciples, had gotten married, the war god paid no heed. After all, was the war god someone who had to send congratulatory gifts to others? Even if he wanted to do so, who would be worthy of accepting his gifts? But the war god was now ordering them to deliver a congratulatory gift for Warden's engagement ceremony. "You can leave now." The war god's calm voice once more sounded out in the tunnel. Castro and Lank stared at the pitch-black stone door, then glanced at each other. Although they didn't understand it at all, they didn't dare disobey the orders of the war god. "Yes, master," Lank and Castro replied, their voices filled with incomparable respect. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 17, Stepping onto the Stage. Yulan Calendar, Year 10009, April 12th. This was the day on which Warden and Nina would be engaged at the imperial capital. One of the two lovers was the younger brother of a peak stage saint-level expert, while the other was the daughter of the emperor. An engagement ceremony such as this would definitely be very well attended. The nobles of the imperial capital who received invitation letters all felt extremely proud. Many common nobles weren't qualified to be invited to this event. After all, if everyone was invited, the count's manor wouldn't be able to hold all those people. The count's manor was very festive today, and the outside of the manor was flooded with arriving carriages, which blocked off a large half of the Boulder Street. The guards and servants of the nobles weren't qualified to enter the manor, and all had to wait outside. In total, there were thousands of guards and servants waiting outside. An ocean of people. Each carriage was gaudier and more lavish than the next, and each young noble lady was dressed more beautifully and was more mesmerizing than the last. The engagement ceremony banquet at the manor was definitely one of the imperial events of the highest caliber, and the people who came were all people of great status. "Big bro, I still feel really uncomfortable wearing this." Warden had wasted quite a bit of his time in his room. He felt more nervous than he ever had before. Linley laughed. "Enough, Warden. You already look very handsome. Have some confidence." Warden took a deep breath. "Let's go. Time to welcome the guests in the hall." Linley laughingly lectured. "You can't just keep on having Grandpa Hyrie welcome the guests. For example, when His Imperial Majesty comes, how can you possibly not be out there to welcome him?" Warden and Linley entered the main hall, and as soon as they did, they breathed sharply. Good heavens! There were so many people there. What's more, that was just a small portion of the nobles who would be present. Many senior personages hadn't arrived yet. The imperial capital really is the imperial capital. There are far more nobles here than in Fenley City. Linley sighed. In the past, Linley had participated in Alice and Kalen's engagement ceremony. The number of people present that day clearly were far fewer than the number attending the ceremony today, and were clearly a much lower caliber of people as well. The noble clans of a kingdom naturally were far fewer in number than the noble clans of an empire. As soon as Linley and Wharton entered the main hall, they immediately became the center of attention. Wharton's massive frame was simply too eye-catching, and many people went over there to greet him warmly. "Wharton, come over here." Housekeeper Hyrie immediately called out to him. Wharton immediately hastened over to the main door of the hall and began to greet each of the arriving guests. As for Linley, he filled a cup with wine, then casually walked to the center of the hall, occasionally clinking cups with the guests. These nobles were very conscientious and didn't try to get too close to Linley or bother him too much, only gently tipping their cups towards him from afar. However, some of the young noble ladies had their eyes set on Linley. They knew that Linley was unmarried. A 20-something-year-old peak stage saint-level expert, where would anyone find another man like this? What a headache. Linley saw 3 separate young noble ladies begin to drift in his direction. Linley could only pretend not to have seen them. When these 3 young noble ladies were a meter away from Linley, whoosh! A soft yet firm gust of wind suddenly pressed against their bodies. No matter what they tried, those 3 young noble ladies couldn't move any closer towards Linley. And then, Linley raised his cup, smiling faintly, before heading to a corner of the main hall and sitting down. Just then, Master Linley, a golden-haired and golden-eyed beautiful young noble lady, got excited. What sort of amazing technique was that? The other 2 young noble ladies didn't know either. Not knowing wasn't an issue. This didn't impact Linley's status in their heart. In fact, to the contrary, this made Linley seem all the more powerful and mysterious to them. Actually, what Linley had just used was just the simplest manipulations of the wind. Did you see Master Linley's dragon form transformation that day at the Colosseum? He seemed so wild and untamed. I was so excited. He really is exciting. I like this type. Those men at school are all soft as cotton. None of them are extremely manly like him. Linley's hearing was simply too good. Hearing what the young noble ladies were saying to each other, Linley felt a wave of resignation in his heart. They called his dragon form transformation wild and untamed. And extremely manly. His Imperial Majesty has arrived. The voice of the guest announcer at the main gates immediately increased in volume. He had clearly shouted using battle chi, allowing all the guests in the hall to hear clearly. The entire hall full of nobles fell silent as they all looked towards the gates. There were many nobles outside the hall as well. There were too many guests here today, and the hall simply couldn't fit them all inside. Johann has arrived. Linley stood up and left the hall. "Milord." The uniformed gates called out towards Linley. Today, all 5 of the Barker brothers were dressed in handsome matching uniforms. As they wandered around the manor, their massive size and frame made the hearts of the nobles quail. The nobles all secretly sighed, the dragon blood warrior clan lives up to its name. Even their guards were so incredible. Emperor Johann was a sight to behold, as always. Holding the Empress's hand, he was followed by a few bodyguards. "Wharton." Emperor Johann immediately picked out Wharton from the crowd. Seeing how handsome and strong Wharton looked, Johann nodded with satisfaction. "Not bad, not bad." Linley arrived. "Your Imperial Majesty, come rest inside." Linley laughed. "All right. We have much to discuss with you, Master Linley," Emperor Johann said warmly. Immediately, the 2 of them entered the guest hall. As for the other nobles and ministers, they very conscientiously stepped aside for them. So many of the nobles of the imperial capital had arrived today, but Linley hadn't gone to welcome any of them. The nobles all felt that this was normal. A saint-level expert, go welcome them? Was that possible? The chairman of the Dawson conglomerate has arrived. That high-pitched voice rang out again. The chairman of the Dawson conglomerate, one of the three major trading unions of the Yulon continent. Although the Dawson conglomerate didn't actually possess any saint-level experts, it still possessed astonishing economic power. Even Emperor Johann stood up and said to Linley, "Monroe Dawson is one of our good friends." Linley rose as well. Yale was sure to have come alongside Monroe Dawson. Of course Linley would go welcome them. Ha! The big-bellied Monroe Dawson made his way over, with Yale by his father's side. Seeing Emperor Johann, Monroe Dawson immediately bowed slightly. Monroe pays his respects to the mighty Emperor Johann. Emperor Johann smiled warmly. "Monroe, today, Linley is the master of this location. There's no need for you to stand on too much courtesy with us. Master Linley and I have been friends for a long time. Only, I didn't expect that in a few scant years, Master Linley had reached such a level of accomplishment." Ha! Monroe Dawson laughed so hard his eyes turned into merry slits. "Uncle Dawson, just call me Linley." Linley smiled as he spoke. He and Yale were the best of brothers naturally, he had to be respectful to Yale's father. "Wharton, come and greet Uncle Dawson." Wharton came over as well. What a handsome, strapping young lad. Monroe Dawson's eyes lit up when he saw Wharton. Clearly, Wharton's size and stature had surprised him. One noble after another arrived, and even Bloomer arrived. Bloomer acted in an extremely gentlemanly manner today, and even spent some time congratulating Wharton. But Wharton, in his heart, still felt rather uncomfortable around Bloomer. He kept on feeling that Bloomer wasn't speaking sincerely. "Bloomer, your elder brother didn't come today." Emperor Johann laughed as he spoke to Bloomer. "My elder brother is currently in closed-door meditation training, in preparation for his duel with Lord Hateson next month." Bloomer smiled. "Oh. Makes sense." Emperor Johann nodded. Bloomer then glanced towards Wharton, who was welcoming guests at the gate. A cold light flashed in his eyes. In his heart, Bloomer was very unhappy that Wharton had managed to successfully ask for Nina's hand in marriage. The monolithic sword saint, Lord Hateson, has arrived. When the voice rang out, Emperor Johann, Linley, Monroe Dawson, and many others immediately rose to their feet and headed out the hall. Hateson came. Linley was very surprised and pleased. He had thought that Hateson would be busy preparing for next month's duel. Very soon, the grey-robed Hateson walked in by himself. Emperor Johann, Linley, Wharton, and the others all went to welcome him. Ha! Wharton, congratulations. A very friendly smile was on Hateson's face. He then looked at Linley. Jokingly, he said, "Linley, your little brother is getting engaged." "What about you, the big brother?" Linley started. He hadn't expected Hateson to ask such a question. Ha! Emperor Johann began to laugh loudly as well, nodding repeatedly. "Linley, it really is time for you to get married. If you take a fancy to someone, just tell us. We will definitely make sure that lucky girl is sent to you." Linley didn't know whether to laugh or to cry. Lords from the War Gods College have arrived. This call from the gate extricated Linley from having to answer the question, as they all went to welcome the people from the War Gods College. "I didn't expect that the War Gods College would also send people over." Emperor Johann sighed emotionally. Hateson nodded as well. The War Gods College was one of the most major organizations in the Yulon continent. They rarely participated in engagement or wedding events, unless it was the event of one of their own people. Only then would the other fellow apprentices attend. Lank and Castro walked in, side by side. Castro smiled. Ha! Brother Wharton, congratulations." As Castro figured, given how well disposed his master was towards Wharton, then Wharton was qualified to be addressed by him as Brother Wharton. But this term of address baffled Linley, Johann, Hateson, and the others. The members of the War Gods College were extremely arrogant. They rarely paid much attention to other people. Castro's attitude really caused quite a few people to feel puzzled. Today, we two fellow apprentices have come here as representatives of the entire War Gods College to congratulate you, Warden, on this joyful occasion. This is the gift which our master personally instructed us to bring you. Castro directly held out a brocade box towards Warden. Master! Everyone around them was stunned. The war god was giving a gift? We are incredibly grateful. Linley was the first to recover. Smiling, he accepted the congratulatory gift. Castro, Lank, come, have a rest over here. Generally speaking, the servants would accept any congratulatory gifts at the gate, but how would the gift registrars of the Count's Manor dare to take the gifts from people belonging to the War Gods College? Even if they had come empty-handed, it would have been an honor. The Count's Manor was a hubbub of noise. Many high-ranking nobles such as dukes and counts were all chatting amongst themselves, while Linley, Emperor Yuan, Monroe Dawson, Castro, Lank, Haidsun, and the others chatted casually as well. The guests at this engagement ceremony were all absolutely incredible. Just look at the seating arrangements. At Linley's table, the only people present aside from Saint Level's experts were an emperor and the chairman of a conglomerate. Just at this moment, a Saint Level expert is flying over. Many people called out. Linley glanced through the door at the sky, and indeed, saw a human form gracefully soaring through the clouds. Linley, Emperor Johann, and the others all rose to their feet in confusion. But no matter who it was, given this person was a Saint Level expert, they had to give him some face. With a mid-air flash, the man arrived at the main gate. This was a white-haired old man, with a white beard as well. Clearly, he was ancient, but his dreamy, sky-blue eyes were very sharp. Haha, I came uninvited. I hope I won't be unwelcome here. The white-haired old man laughed heartily. He didn't even look at Linley and the others, instead flying directly towards the place where Linley and the others had been seated. As he drew near, Haidsun and Castro hurriedly stepped out of his way, and the white-haired old man sat down on the seat previously occupied by the monolithic sword saint, Haidsun. This is a pretty good seat. I'll sit here. The white-haired old man laughed loudly. Emperor Johann frowned. This man was a bit too impolite. Linley, as well, felt that this white-haired old man was a little too arrogant. Might I ask, before Linley even had a chance to finish his words, the monolithic sword saint, Haidsun, quickly said in an extremely courteously voice, I didn't expect you would come here, my lord. This truly is an unexpected surprise for us. By his side, both Castro and Lank hurriedly nodded their heads in assent. Their attitudes were unbelievably humble. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 18, Experts of Other Planes. Linley, Emperor Johann, and the others were all puzzled. Who in the world was this mysterious white-haired old man? Even the number one Saint Level expert, Haidsun, was incredibly deferential to him. Could it be the war god? Linley secretly wondered. Most likely, only a deity could make Haidsun be this deferential. And clearly, both Castro and Lank recognized this person as well. He was most likely the war god. Add a chair. Housekeeper Hyrie instructed a nearby servant. Linley took a step forward. Smiling, he said, Sir, we two brothers feel extremely honored to have you attend my younger brother's engagement ceremony. Might I know your name, sir? Me. The white-haired old man glanced smilingly at Linley. My name is Hodan Huodan. Hodan. Linley quickly combed through his memory, but he definitely didn't recall an expert by the name of Hodan. Linley, no need to ask anything else. It is wonderful that Lord Hodan is able to attend today. Let's all sit down first. The monolithic sword saint, Haidsun, said with a laugh. although Linley and Emperor Johann and the others were mystified. They all sat down. "Milord, let us offer you a toast, milord." Castro and Lank both raised their cups. "Milord." A few things suddenly came to Linley's awareness. First of all, most likely only a deity was capable of making a saint-level expert address them as milord. At the same time, if Castro and Lank addressed him as milord and not as master, then this person was most likely not the war god. The continent had 5 prominent deities. Linley had already met Dylan and Caesar, while he had yet to meet the high priest, the war god, and the king of the forest of darkness. The white-haired old man should therefore be one of those 3. He was now certain that this man was not the war god. So this person should be either the high priest or the king of the forest of darkness. However, it has been countless years since those 2 deities showed themselves. How could Hateson, Castro, and Lank all recognize him? Linley refused to believe it. A deity-level expert didn't make appearances so easily. Linley. The white-haired old man named Hodan raised his cup. "Come, let us toast each other." Linley hurriedly raised his cup. "When I see you, Linley, I think about the past affairs of your Baruch clan and those several dragon blood warriors." "Ha ha, unexpectedly, several thousand years have passed in the blink of an eye." Hodan laughed merrily. These words caused Linley's heart to twitch hard. Those several dragon blood warriors of the Baruch clan? Thousands of years ago. Linley looked at Hodan with confusion. In his own clan's history books, there had been 3 generations of dragon blood warriors, but later on 1,000 years would pass between each generation of dragon blood warriors. But this Hodan was saying that thousands of years ago, he had met several dragon blood warriors. "I didn't know that Elder Hodan knew the ancestors of my clan." Linley laughed. "Of course. Your clan leader, Baruch, really is a formidable fellow," Hodan said with feeling. "But your Baruch clan has really decayed. In the past, when you had dozens of dragon blood warriors, who would dare offend you? Such a pity, such a pity." Linley stared. Dozens of dragon blood warriors. Linley and Wharton both looked at Hodan in shock. "What, is that surprising?" Hodan looked at Linley and Wharton. Hateson hurriedly said, "Milord, it would be best if you discuss this somewhere else. There are too many people here. It was best if they didn't reveal these secrets to the ordinary nobles." "It is fine. Only the people at this table can hear us. As for the people outside of it, no matter how loudly we speak, they won't be able to overhear anything." Hodan chortled. There were 8 people at this table. Aside from Wharton, Emperor Johann, and Monroe Dawson, the others all possessed at least saint-level power, with the white-haired old man's power being immeasurably deeper. Dozens of dragon blood warriors. Linley and Wharton could hardly dare to believe it. Their ancestral records were very clear. The first 3 generations of their clan produced 3 dragon blood warriors, after which 1,000 years would pass between dragon blood warriors. In total, there had been only 5. How could there have been dozens of dragon blood warriors a few thousand years back? The 4 supreme warrior clans, alas, all have decayed to a sorry state. In the past, the 4 supreme warrior clans were quite glorious, Hodan said with emotion. Linley suddenly thought of something. He remembered how in the secret Dragon Blood Manual, there were instructions on the second way by which one could become a Dragon Blood warrior, drinking live dragon's blood. But based on that manual, all 3 Dragon Blood warriors were natural-born Dragon Blood warriors. If the second method had never been used successfully, why would the secret Dragon Blood Manual record it? In the past, both Linley and Doering Coward had suspected that the manual had been altered. His clan's history should probably have included examples of Dragon Blood warriors who were produced via drinking live dragon's blood. But I didn't expect there were dozens. Both Linley and Wharton felt extremely shocked internally. Oh, that little girl named Nina is coming over. The white-haired old man, Hodan, beamed, causing Linley and the other shocked participants to turn and look. Linley and the others all stood up, and Wharton immediately went over to welcome Nina. Holding hands, Wharton and Nina went from table to table, toasting the guests. But right now, both Wharton and Linley, who remained at his seat, felt their minds to be in a state of utter confusion. Their clan's history clearly wasn't as simple as they had imagined. In addition, Saint-level experts had extremely long lifespans. How could it be that not a single dragon blood warrior in their clan was remaining? And not just their clan, even the Undying Warrior clan, the Violet Flame Warrior clan, and the Tiger Stripe Warrior clan had seen the same thing. All of the 4 Supreme Warrior clans had bizarrely collapsed. Secret, Linley understood that the history of the continent definitely contained many hidden secrets that were different from the official accounts. For example, the King of Killers, Caesar, had once told Linley that 5,000 years ago, many experts from other planes of existence had descended to the plane of the Yulan continent. But in the history books, there was no such thing. Linley found himself somewhat mentally disengaged as the engagement ceremony continued. He kept on thinking about these things. He even wanted to have a private chat with that white-haired old man named Hodan. Clearly, this Hodan person knew many things about the affairs of the past. After dinner, the various nobles in the main hall were chatting idly. At this time, Linley, who had grown frantic with impatience, suddenly heard a sentence that was as beautiful as music from the heavens. "Linley, come with me. I have something to discuss with you." Hodan actually reached out to Linley and actively asked to speak to him privately. Wharton looked at his older brother, and Linley instructed, "Wharton, you stay here. Afterwards, go spend some time with Nina. As for Mr. Hodan, I'll speak with him." As he spoke, Linley followed Hodan out of the main hall. Hatesun, Castro, and Lank all glanced at each other. "I wonder what Linley will decide." Hatesun sighed with emotion. Hodan and Linley left the main hall. While walking, Hodan said, "Linley, where are those 2 saint-level experts of yours? Call them over as well." Linley was startled. How did this Hodan know everything? Hodan knew the names of Wharton and Nina, and he also knew that Linley had 2 magical beasts. He even knew that Bibi was a saint-level magical beast. Linley didn't try to deny anything. He immediately spiritually contacted Bibi and Haru, calling them over. Since there were saint-level experts present today, Linley hadn't allowed Bibi or Haru to go to the main hall. "Let's go to the training grounds behind the manor. There's nobody there." Hodan chuckled. Gruel. Haru and Bibi arrived by Linley's side. Squeak. Bibi continued to pretend. "Little fellow, I know that you are a saint-level magical beast. Stop squeaking." Hodan laughed as he reached out to rub Bibi on the head. Bibi wanted to move aside, but to his astonishment, he found that it was impossible for him to move. He had no choice but to allow Hodan to rub his head. Linley was secretly shocked. Without question, Hodan was a deity-level expert. He really is a deity. How many deities does the continent have? Linley thought to himself, while at the same time, he followed Hodan to the training grounds. "Boss, who is that old fellow? How is he so powerful?" Bibi didn't dare to be too playful right now, appearing very obedient. Haru obediently followed by Linley's side as well. "Close the door first. Without my orders, no one is to be permitted entry." Linley instructed the servants, and then Hodan headed directly to a stone bench and sat down. "You can sit as well." Hodan pointed to another seat opposite from him. Linley sat down obediently, then said humbly, "Mr. Hodan, I am totally lost right now. Can you please provide me with guidance? The reason I came today is primarily for the sake of your 2 magical beasts." Hodan smiled. "Of course, you and those 3 other undying warriors who possess the saint level of power can also just barely be considered qualified to be worthy of being considered my targets. HRM. Linley looked at Hodan with confusion. Hodan smiled. Linley, in the countless years of the Yulan continent's history, there have been countless geniuses as well. Even if there is only one every century, in 100,000 years, that means there have been 1,000. But right now, how many saint-level experts exist in the Yulan continent? Each empire only has a few dozen. Saint-level experts can live for over 100,000 years. Linley said in shock. Saint-level experts, so long as they aren't killed, can easily live 100,000 years. Hodan laughed calmly. Upon reaching the saint level, you are virtually immortal and immune to aging. However, you can still be killed, of course. Linley was also puzzled. If this was the case, why were there so few saint-level experts? After all, the Yulan continent definitely saw a new saint-level expert every century. Then what is the reason? Linley asked. The reason is, they've gone to other planes. Hodan smiled. Other planes. Linley started. But then, Linley suddenly understood, and he hurriedly asked, could it be that the ancestors of the Baruch clan have also gone to other planes? Right. Those dozens of dragon blood warriors have all gone to the infernal realm, one of the 4 higher planes. In the past, I even visited your ancestor, Baruch, in the infernal realm and drank with him. Hodan laughed heartily. The infernal realm. Mr. Hodan, you come from the infernal realm. Linley felt as though the secrets of the universe were unfolding before his very eyes. Hodan nodded. Right. Linley, let me put it to you like this, in the ordinary, material world, once a life form has reached the saint level, they will be qualified to enter the 4 higher planes, or perhaps the 7 divine planes. They will be permitted to train and live there. In the history of the Yulan continent, many saint-level experts have already left the Yulan continent and chosen to enter the 4 higher planes or the 7 divine planes. Hodan smiled. Linley nodded to show he understood. Technically speaking, you and those other 3 undying warriors, despite possessing saint-level power, aren't yet at the saint level in your human forms. There was actually no need for me to hurry over here to speak to you. My primary targets were those 2 saint-level magical beasts of yours. They have both reached the saint level. They are allowed to choose, to continue to live here at the Yulan continent, or to enter the other planes. Hodan quickly said with a hint of enticement, the 4 higher planes are much better than the 7 divine planes. In the infernal realm, for example, experts as are common as the clouds, and saint-level experts are nothing more than ordinary people. In that place you will have excellent training opportunities, and treasures such as interspatial rings are as common as water. There's a terrifyingly large amount of treasures there. Linley understood. Only upon reaching the saint level was one qualified to enter the higher planes. Naturally, the 4 higher planes would have experts everywhere, with saint-level experts being nothing more than commoners. I'm not going. I'm staying with the boss. BB shook his head. I'm not going either. I'm staying with my master. Haru said. Hodan looked at Linley. Laughing, he said, Linley, your real power has already reached the peak stage of the saint level. You are completely qualified to enter the higher planes. Do you wish to go? Linley didn't respond. Instead, he looked at Hodan. Mr. Hodan, who are you, exactly? Me? Oh. I forgot to tell you. Hodan smiled at Linley. I am the planar overseer for the Yulan continent. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 19, A Choice. Planar Overseer. Hearing this title, Linley somewhat understood. The term overseer contained elements of both watching over and protecting. No wonder this Hodan possessed such astonishing strength. Linley, you haven't answered me yet. Are you willing to go to the other planes? Hodan urged. It was up to each individual saint level as to whether or not they wished to go to the higher planes. The planar overseer was only responsible for telling them about this choice. Linley remained very calm. Mr. Hodan, honestly speaking, I don't know anything about the other planes. Can you perhaps enlighten me a bit? Linley asked humbly. Doering Cowart actually knew about the existence of the planar overseer, but at the time, Linley was far too weak, and so Doering Cowart didn't see a need to tell Linley right away. But Doering Cowart had explained a little bit about the 4 higher planes. There are many material planes such as the Yulon continent. These material planes are all about the same. On some, magical beasts are the primary power, while in others, other races are in power. In some, humans are in power. These planes are essentially the same. Hodan began explaining some of the most basic information regarding the higher planes. Above these material planes are the 4 higher planes and the 7 divine planes. Hodan laughed. The 7 divine planes were created by the 7 principal sovereigns of the 7 elements. As for the 4 higher planes, they were created by the 4 overgods. Linley nodded. The 7 divine planes and the 4 higher planes, what are the differences between them? Linley asked. Hodan laughed. The 7 divine planes are planes of earth, fire, water, wind, lightning, light, and darkness. For example, you are someone who is training in the laws of the earth. If you were to enter the divine plane of earth, you would find that you train twice as fast using half the effort. However, the 7 divine planes are inferior to the 4 higher planes. It's best if you enter the higher realms. Hodan said enticingly. Linley, you must understand, the higher planes were created by the overgods. The 4 overgods far outstrip the power of the sovereigns. Overgods? Can anyone reach the level of overgod through training? Linley suddenly asked. Hodan stared at Linley in astonishment. Ha ha, Hodan began to roar with laughter, as though he had heard the funniest joke ever. Linley looked at Hodan in confusion. Linley, it seems you really know nothing. Hodan laughed. You have no idea. The overgods aren't people who reached that level through training. Let me explain to you. Every single race has the chance to become a sovereign through training, the chance is just extremely low. How low? Linley asked. Let me give an example. In 100 million ordinary deities, it would be rare for a single sovereign to appear. Hodan laughed. For example, in the divine realm of light, there are countless demigods, gods, and high gods. But in 10 million years, you might not see a single sovereign appear from their ranks. Linley was silent. Demigods, gods, and high gods. Linley frowned as he looked at Hodan in confusion. In the past, Grandpa Doering had only discussed the existence of gods. He didn't explain further. The divine spark of deities are of different levels as well. Hodan said calmly. Once you reach a certain level of mastery with regards to the laws will themselves grant you their recognition and descend into you a divine spark, allowing you to become a deity. But when you begin, you'll only be a demigod. As you continue to understand more, at a certain level, you will become a god. Only now did Linley understood. What level of deity is the war god? Linley asked with curiosity. Hodan glanced at Linley with irritation, then laughed. For the sake of your ancestors, I'll tell you. The war god is only a demigod. A demigod. Linley blinked twice. Good heavens. The war god had become a deity over 5,000 years ago. Given his talent, he should be much more powerful now than before. How could he still just be a demigod? Ha ha, Linley, do you think it is easy to advance from being a demigod to a god? Hodan shook his head. But the war god was a demigod 5,000 years ago. Linley immediately said. At that time, he was indeed a demigod. But there are differences amongst demigods as well. For example, let's say that to become a demigod, one must master 1% of a law, while to become a god, one must master 10% of a law. Someone who only mastered 9% of a law is only a demigod, but is he on the same level of power as someone who mastered 1% of a law? Even though they are both demigods. Hodan explained in a simplified way. Linley now understood. Linley, don't be too greedy. On the road to becoming a deity, every single step is extremely arduous. There have been countless demigods in the 4 higher planes who have spent hundreds of millions of years, or even billions of years, without being able to break through from the demigod level to the god level. But what about the overgods? Linley immediately said. The overgods. Hodan laughed again. You were asking me earlier if it was possible for humans to reach the overgod level, right? Let me explain. The overgods, Hodan continued to snicker at Linley. Linley, the overgods aren't people, nor do they have genders. They don't even have bodies. Linley stared at Hodan in surprise. The 4 overgods are manifestations of the 4 prime laws. They are nothing more than the very embodiment of the laws that flow through the countless planes. The overgod of death is the embodiment of the laws of death. The overgod of destruction is the incarnation of the laws of destruction. The overgod of life is the avatar of the laws of life. And the overgod of fate is the personification of the laws of fate. Hodan laughed as he looked at Linley. You tell me. Can you become an overgod through training? Linley understood. The 4 overgods were a natural part of the infinite planes of the universe. They were the heavens, they were the earth, they were part of the souls of every living creature. They were the laws themselves. The overgods are beings of pure law. They know nothing of love, hate, friendship, grudges, or other such emotions. They are cold. If you cursed an overgod, they would ignore you. If you flattered them, they will not reward you. However, if you were to damage the planes themselves, then the overgods would punish you. Linley laughed. Although the overgods existed, they were the personification of the laws of the universe. There was no need to pay them any heed or attention at all. Curse an overgod. Someone would dare to curse an overgod? Linley asked, laughing. Hodan stared at him, then laughingly berated Linley, I was just giving an example. In all my years in the netherworld, I've never heard of an overgod manifesting in person. As far as you should be concerned, the most invincible power in the world is the power of the sovereigns. The will of the sovereigns is not to be disobeyed. Linley nodded, signifying understanding. Linley, the 7 divine planes are extremely beneficial for someone training in a particular law. But the 4 higher planes are different. No matter what sort of law you are studying, the speed at which you train in the 4 higher planes will be as fast as if you were training in the relevant law in one of the 7 divine planes. Hodan said persuasively. Thus, the 4 higher planes are the best choices. The 4 higher planes, the celestial realm, the netherworld, the infernal realm, and the life realm. Linley. The ancestors of your clan are all in the infernal realm. Why don't you go there as well? Hodan continued. Go. Linley had already made up his mind. The infernal realm only had the ancestors he had never met. There wasn't much point going there. By contrast, in the Yulon continent, he had his younger brother Wharton, and his dear brothers, Yale, Reynolds, and George. He also had many friends such as Barker, his brothers, Jen, and the others. In addition, he also had a goal that was unfinished. The utter destruction of the Radiant Church. Seeing Linley's hesitation, Hodan continued to speak persuasively. Linley. The infernal realm has countless races and all sorts of powerful species of creatures, which have all sorts of attacks. In the infernal realm, training is extremely exciting. No need. Linley shook his head and laughed. Mr. Hodan, Thank you for telling me so much. However, I am still young, and I haven't even gotten married. I'm in no rush to go there. Hearing Linley say this, Hodan could only nod with resignation. As the planar overseer, he was forbidden from forcing people to leave this plane. If others were unwilling to leave, they could remain in their own plane as long as they liked, even to the point of becoming a high god. Mr. Hodan, I wish to ask you, if one goes to a higher plane, can one return? Linley suddenly asked. Hodan shook his head. It is virtually impossible. Out of 100,000 people who enter a higher plane, there usually isn't even a single person who can come back to his homeland. This is because returning home carries an extremely high price. Linley understood. No wonder the war god and the high priest were unwilling to go to the higher planes. For even deity-level experts to be unwilling to go, one could imagine how difficult returning was. Not even 1 out of 100,000 would be able to return. This probability was simply too low. Mr. Hodan, I'm so sorry to have wasted your time. Linley said humbly. Since that's the case, I'll leave now. Hodan stood up. Linley, if one day you wish to leave this plane, you can come to the Arctic ice cap at the end of the North Sea to find me. I live atop a glacier in the Arctic ice cap. Linley felt surprised. The Arctic ice cap. This was the first time Linley had heard that at the end of the North Sea, there was an Arctic ice cap. Mr. Hodan, what about at the end of the South Sea? Linley was curious. The South Sea is far larger than the North Sea, and is virtually boundless. But at the end of it is the end of the Yulon Plain. You'll find nothing there but chaotic space. Linley now understood. After speaking, Hodan immediately flew into the air and left, heading north and quickly disappearing. Linley stood there, not moving for a long time. This discussion with Hodan had a major impact on Linley. Boss, I'm actually pretty curious about the higher planes. Wow! All sorts of amazing species, and saint levels are just ordinary people there. That place must be awesome. Bibi's eyes were gleaming. Linley patted Bibi on his little head. Do you want to die? Most likely, any expert in that plane could easily kill them. Linley already had a plan for his future training. Sovereign. That was too far away. One step at a time. First, reach the demigod level. Upon becoming a demigod, Linley would have confidence in his ability to destroy the Radiant Church. Linley knew his own limits. Given his current power, he wasn't yet strong enough to impose his will upon and act as he pleased in the Yulon continent. It's hard to say if I'd even be able to defeat Olivier. Linley didn't feel any confidence at all when it came to Oliver's spiritual attack in his obsidian sword. Spiritual attack. Linley suddenly thought of his coiling dragon ring. In the past, when divine power had entered Linley's soul, a burst of power had emanated from the coiling dragon ring to counter it. But Grandpa Douring was also a master of the coiling dragon ring in the past. Why is it that at the point of his death, the ring didn't help him? Linley was puzzled. The mysterious power of the coiling dragon had to be activated somehow. The divine power of the Radiant Sovereign had done just that, somehow agitating the power in the coiling dragon ring, causing it to manifest protectively. But Oliver's attack wouldn't necessarily also activate the coiling dragon ring's protective energy. I have no idea what secrets lie hidden within the coiling dragon ring. But no matter what, I can't just put all my hopes on the coiling dragon ring. In battle, the only one I can rely on is myself. Right now, the manor was filled with countless nobles and magnates, but Linley and his 2 magical beasts remained in the training courtyard in the rear of the manor. As if no one was present, Linley began to train. After going to the infernal realm, returning will be almost impossible. I can't possibly hope that I will receive any support from my ancestors. Everything that I do in the Yulon continent, I will have to rely on myself. But Linley had forgotten something. Why was it that the dozens of dragon blood warriors as well as all of the other supreme warriors had left the Yulan continent en masse, and hadn't left even a single saint-level expert behind to look after their descendants? The waters of the Yulan continent were far deeper than Linley could imagine. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 20, The War God's College. By nightfall, many of the guests at the manor had left, and most of the nobles were now gone. The engagement banquet was an afternoon banquet. The people still remaining at the manor were all relatively important guests. "Warden, where is your big brother?" Yale poured 2 cups of wine, then walked to Warden's side. "I haven't seen him for almost the entire afternoon, I think. My big brother left with that Mr. Hodan. No clue where he went." Warden shook his head. "I'll go look for him. Given your big brother's personality, he might have run off to the training yard and started to train." Yale left the guest hall. Making his way down the corridors, he arrived at the training courtyard after a while. Drip, drip. Water flowed down the man-made fountain. Each drip drop of water could be heard clearly in the silent training courtyard. Linley was seated in the meditative trance on the grass, not moving at all. If one moved closer and examined him carefully, one might see that Linley's muscles were contracting and expanding in a very rhythmic way. And as they did, a natural gust of wind seemed to have surrounded Linley. His spirit had become one with the endless earth and attuned to the boundless wind. Boom! Boom! Whoosh! Whoosh! His eyes shut, Linley could feel the trembling, vibrating spirit of the earth, and the formless wind which filled the skies. After a long time, Linley opened his eyes. His lordship issued the order that no one is to be permitted to enter without his permission. "Not even me?" Yale sounded very resigned. "Boss Yale, come in." Linley had a hint of a smile on his lips, and he immediately stood up. Only now did Yale walk in. Looking at Linley, he chuckled, "Third bro, I knew it. You are training again. Why are you so hard working? You are already a peak stage saint level. You are already incredibly powerful." Linley glanced at Yale and chuckled. To Yale, Linley could already be considered a peerless expert in the Yulan continent. Even the emperor of the O'Brien Empire was incredibly courteous to Linley. But after having interacted with Hodan, Linley knew that he was still far from being adequate. "Come, have some wine with me. I haven't had much of a chance to drink with you today." Yale put down 2 flasks of wine on the stone table. Linley sat down as well, then retrieved 2 wine cups from his interspatial ring. "It's a pity that 4th bro couldn't be here." Linley shook his head and sighed. A month ago, when Emperor Johann had announced who would marry his daughter, Reynolds had left the imperial capital. He had no choice. The army had ordered him to return. He had to go. Yale said helplessly. "Last time, he just so happened to be on leave, which was why we 3 brothers were able to have a reunion. It isn't so bad for 4th bro, but for 2nd bro, if we want to see him, we have to go to the Yulan Empire." The distance from the Yulan Empire to the O'Brien Empire was quite far. Chatting idly with his dear bro, Linley felt extremely cheerful. Why would he want to give this up to go to a higher plane and engage in slaughter? The most enjoyable part of training was in the spirit gaining a greater and greater level of understanding. It wasn't about the bloody slaughter. "Third bro, in a few days, I'll leave the imperial capital as well." Yale sighed emotionally. "Nothing for it. I'm still young. There are many things which the conglomerate needs me to handle. Otherwise, in the future, I won't be qualified to manage it." Linley understood. An organization on the level of the Dawson conglomerate definitely wouldn't award someone the leadership position just because one's father previously held it. Otherwise, the Dawson conglomerate wouldn't be as powerful as it currently was. Of course, being the son of the chairman had its advantages, but one also needed to have ability and a work history. Next month, Olivier will be doing battle with the monolithic sword saint, Hatesun. Doesn't that mean you'll miss it? Linley laughed. Yeah. Yale laughed uncaringly. I'm just a magus anyhow. How much would I understand from watching a battle between two saint-level warriors? Linley suddenly put down his wine cup and looked at the door. Someone is coming. Who? Yale was puzzled. Someone else knows that you are here. Those two from the War Gods College. Linley laughed calmly. Saint-level experts could use spiritual energy to scan an area. The comparatively tiny manor could easily be totally covered by it. Naturally, they could easily locate Linley. Castro and Lank walked towards the back courtyard side by side. They were very surprised by their master's instructions. Although Linley's strength is not bad, there's no need for master to act this way. Lank shook his head. I don't understand either. Castro also felt puzzled. Both of them were confused. Walking into the back courtyard, they saw that the guards had opened the door for them already. Castro and Lank exchanged a glance. Linley knew that we were coming. Castro and Lank immediately saw Linley seated alongside Yale. Seeing that Yale was here as well, the two frowned. Yale immediately stood up. Third bro, people have come to see you. Why don't you have a chat with them? I'll go to the main hall for now. Linley nodded. After Yale left, Castro and Lank sat down. Linley asked, Castro, Lank, why have you come? Castro laughed. Linley. The two of us have come bearing an invitation from our master to pay a visit to the War Gods College. The War God is inviting me to the War Gods College. Linley could hardly believe it. How could someone like the War God be inviting him? Lank nodded. Linley, master did indeed instruct us to have you come to the War Gods College. And what's more, master has instructed our senior apprentice brother to welcome you personally. Linley, you must understand, even when the monolithic sword saint, Hatesun, visited the War Gods College in the past, our senior apprentice brother didn't come to welcome him. Oh. Linley was intrigued. Who was this senior apprentice brother of the War Gods College? Your senior apprentice brother should be the first disciple of the War God, right? Wait, how old is he? Linley suddenly came to a realization. Good heavens! The War God was someone who had reached this level over 5,000 years ago. Castro and Lank both grinned. Right. Our senior apprentice brother is already 5,000 years old. He isn't much younger than our master. Castro nodded. We were very surprised as well when we heard that master instructed our senior apprentice brother to welcome you. Linley knew that the War God only accepted a personal disciple every 300 years. The youngest one was Bloomer, only 30 years old or so. But the oldest was the senior apprentice brother, and was 5,000 years old. All right. When should I go? Linley asked with a laugh. You can come to the War Gods College at any time. How about this? Here's my insignia. When you arrive at the War Gods College, hand it to one of our fellow apprentices. They will inform me. With a flip of his hand, Castro retrieved a scarlet-red medal which had Castro's name carved onto it. Accepting the insignia, Linley laughed and nodded. Don't worry. I will definitely go. Castro and Lank both nodded, then left. Linley secretly wondered to himself, if the senior apprentice brother of the War Gods College was 5,000 years old, how powerful was he? Could he be weaker than the monolithic sword saint? Linley didn't much believe it. The monolithic sword saint was only a few centuries old, while the senior apprentice brother had been training in the War Gods College for thousands of years with the War Gods' personal guidance. After 5,000 years, how could he possibly not be strong? The primary peak of the War God Mountain was covered with many buildings. These were the places where the honorary disciples of the War God stayed, along with Kenyon, Castro, and Lank, who were in charge of the ordinary affairs of War God Mountain, great or small. The mountain wind was very strong this day. Many of the honorary disciples of the War Gods College were training. Harg. A boulder weighing dozens of tons was easily tossed from one person to another, who in turn kicked it back. The 2 honorary disciples of the War Gods College were able to easily kick around this massive boulder. Most importantly, the boulder wasn't damaged at all. This required a very fine control of both physical strength and battle chi. Right at this time, a graceful figure appeared, soaring across the sky like blue smoke. It gracefully circled around War God Mountain, and in the blink of an eye it arrived at the War Gods College. HRM. One of the honorary disciples of the War Gods College looked at the arrival with surprise. He hadn't seen anyone earlier, but then all of a sudden, this person had appeared. "Are you, Master Linley?" The honorary disciple could recognize him. On the day of the duel at the Colosseum, the honorary disciple had gone to support Bloomer. Smiling, Linley nodded. "Castro invited me to come. This is his insignia. Please go inform him." Linley tossed the insignia to the honorary disciple. The honorary disciple hurriedly said, "I'll go report it right away." "Master Linley, please take a rest first." Linley nodded. Warden's engagement ceremony had concluded 2 days ago, and today, Linley had accepted the invitation and headed off to the War Gods College and see for himself what it was all about. "That person is Master Linley. I hear he's only 27 years old. Even apprentice brother Kenyon was easily defeated by him. I was there that day. It only took one blow. Compared to Linley, apprentice brother Kenyon is very weak. Apprentice brother Kenyon is only the 25th personal disciple of our master. It is understandable that he is a bit weaker. Most likely, apprentice brother Castro is roughly on par with Linley. If the first 10 disciples of master had been the ones to do battle, most likely they would have easily beat Linley." Many of the honorary disciples of the War Gods College murmured in quiet voices while casting glances at Linley. All of these honorary disciples were geniuses in their own right, and they were all proud and arrogant. But compared to Linley, they had a long way to go. "Linley!" A bright voice rang out. Castro ran out, his face wreathed in smiles. "You came after all. Come, let's go to Blue Thunder Peak." "Not here." Linley was puzzled. Clearly, this primary peak was the largest one with the most buildings. The other 4 peaks didn't have much construction. Castro laughed. "Linley, we have many honorary disciples here at the War Gods College, so we let them stay at the main peaks. Myself, Lank, and Kenyon all stay here because we are in charge of them. The rest of our fellow apprentices are all on the other mountain peaks." Linley nodded slightly. Castro immediately led Linley in the direction of a different mountain peak. Linley and Castro walked up the steep mountain walls as easily as if they were traveling on flat land, their steps as graceful as flying birds. "Castro, you are in which generation of personal disciples of the War God?" Linley asked. "Me? I'm the 22nd personal disciple." Castro laughed. "You've reached the peak stage of the saint level by now, right?" Linley asked. When he was at the courtyard, he had heard the honorary disciples say that Castro should be on par with him. This was why Linley asked this question. Castro nodded. "Right. But I most likely am not a match for you. Your speed is quite astonishing, on par with Olivier." Linley was thinking non-stop. Even the 22nd personal disciple had reached the peak stage of the saint level. Then what about the earlier disciples? Castro, the monolithic sword saint, Haidsun, is reputed to be the #1 saint in the world. Has he ever competed against your senior apprentice brother? Linley asked. No way. Castro let out an involuntary chuckle. Although Haidsun already has a rather high grasp and understanding of the laws of the earth, the War Gods College has quite a few people more powerful than him. The reason why Hatesun is famous is because my senior apprentice brother and second apprentice brother are all over 5,000 years old, and have retreated from the secular world thousands of years ago. How could they go out and compete against a junior who is only a few centuries old for the sake of fame and glory? Linley suddenly understood. Even aside from our war gods college, I know others more powerful than him as well. For example, that king of killers, Caesar. 1,000 years ago, Caesar sparred against my senior apprentice brother, and they were both on par with each other. I imagine if Caesar wanted to act against Hatesun, he would be able to easily gain victory. Castro said with certainty. Linley was startled. Caesar. It seemed as though Castro didn't know that Caesar had already reached the deity level. But for his senior apprentice brother to have dueled Caesar to a standstill 1,000 years ago meant that he was indeed an incredible person. We've arrived at Blue Thunder Peak. Come. It's been a long time since I've seen my senior apprentice brother as well. Master has always said that amongst all of us disciples, senior apprentice brother is the most likely to reach the deity level. Castro's face was filled with confidence. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 21, The Eldest Disciple. The mountain wind howled drearily. Walking up the mountain, Linley and Castro traveled 100 meters with every 2 or 3 steps. On Blue Thunder Peak, 8 of us apprentice brothers are living there. Our senior apprentice brother is also living at the very top of Blue Thunder Peak. Castro said with emotion. But Linley was currently thinking about that battle the eldest disciple had with Caesar 1,000 years ago. Castro, do you know anything about that duel between your senior apprentice brother and Caesar? Linley asked. Castro said enviously, when that duel occurred, I hadn't been accepted into the War Gods College yet. I have, however, heard other fellow apprentices discuss it. That Caesar was extremely powerful, and he was extremely fast as well. Senior apprentice brother's speed is the highest amongst all of us, but he was only able to match Caesar's speed. How fast were they? Linley was also specialized in speed. Castro laughed calmly. I don't know either. After all, I didn't personally witness this duel. But I think, they should be much faster than you and Olivier. Linley could understand. After all, his human form was not yet at the saint level. He still had a long way to grow. It was normal if he currently wasn't a match for them. At the top of Blue Thunder Peak. The top of the mountain had an open space that was a few dozen meters wide. There were some stunted dwarf trees at the top of the mountain as well as some wild grass. Next to one of the old dwarf trees, there were 2 stone houses. And at the top of the mountain, there was a man standing there, staring downwards. Linley carefully looked at this man. He was dressed in a simple blue robe. He was rather skinny, but his back was ramrod straight. His short hair was only 3 inches, and it was also blue. Just by looking at him, one could sense that this man was possessed of a valiant, resolute air. Senior apprentice brother. Castro said respectfully. The blue-haired man turned to look at them. When his gaze landed on Linley, Linley suddenly sensed his own soul seemed to tremble from the gaze. Was this an attack? Linley instantly grew frightened. He was certain that against ordinary warriors, most likely the gaze alone of this senior apprentice brother could destroy their soul. Fortunately, he himself possessed the spiritual energy of an archmagus of the 9th rank. Not bad. The man smiled and nodded. You are Linley. I am. Linley nodded as well. My name is Fain Fa N. The man smiled. Master instructed me to come welcome you. You drank dragon's blood in order to gain the ability to transform, I believe. You aren't a pure dragon blood warrior, right? HRM. Linley frowned. After hearing about your dragon form's appearance, I deduced this. I've met other dragon blood warriors of your Baruch clan. Fain said with a calm laugh. So what if I did drink dragon's blood? Linley responded. The eldest disciple, Fane, sighed with emotion. Based on what I know, the pure dragon blood warriors have tremendous potential, while the variant dragon blood warriors who drank dragon's blood have slightly less potential. If you were a pure dragon blood warrior, upon reaching the peak of your power, you would probably be able to do battle with me. Even the potential of a variant dragon blood warrior most likely is greater than yours. Linley was very unhappy with the way this eldest disciple was speaking. Fane frowned. He was a person of great status. Even the so-called most powerful saint in the world, the monolithic sword saint, Hatesun, was nothing more than a junior in Fane's eyes, not even worthy of his attention. He truly was rather dissatisfied with the way Linley had just spoken to him. But when he thought of the instructions the war god had given him, Fane simply smiled, no longer allowing himself to be angry. Indeed, supreme warriors, even non-pure ones, still have higher potential than normal people. Fane smiled, then glanced at the nearby Castro. Apprentice brother, you can go back now. For now, I will attend to Linley. Yes, senior apprentice brother. Castro said very respectfully. He then looked at Linley meaningfully, signaling with his eyes for Linley to not be too arrogant. He then left the mountain. Linley took a deep breath. He, too, understood that here at the War Gods College, it was best to be a bit more humble. Linley, let's sit down and chat. With a wave of his hand, Fane caused two nearby wooden seats to fly over towards them, landing in front of himself and Linley. Seeing this, Linley was extremely puzzled. What technique had Fane used just now? Linley hadn't sensed him using any battle chi. I hear that you refused Lord Hodan. Fane laughed. Even Fane was extremely respectful towards Hodan. Hodan was, after all, a deity-level expert. Indeed. Linley nodded. Wise. Fane laughed. Linley, we should feel very lucky to have been born here in the Yulan continent. Oh. Linley was somewhat confused. Fane continued, many saints have already been famous for centuries and have enjoyed all there is to enjoy. Most of their family members have died of old age. Without anything tying them down emotionally, a large number of them have gone to the higher planes. Linley nodded. He understood this. Eventually, one would grow weary of what the material plane had to offer. After the passage of centuries, all family members who had not reached the saint level would have died long ago. It was very normal for them to eventually decide to go to the higher planes. But what those people do not understand is that many of the experts of the higher planes wish they could come here to the plane of the Yulan continent. A hint of a smile was at the corner of Fane's lips. Linley, 5,000 years ago, many experts from different planes descended to the Yulan continent. Do you know of this affair? I've heard of it. Linley nodded. I didn't expect you to know about this. Fane nodded. Those countless experts all came to the Yulan continent. Naturally, it was because there was something about this plane which attracted them. Fane shook his head and sighed. But many saints instead choose to run off to the higher planes, where experts are as common as the clouds. They give up what is close to them for something far away. Linley, let me just tell you this. Don't be in a hurry to go to the higher planes. Stay here. Eventually, you'll know what huge benefits this plane has to offer. As for what secrets lie hidden within the Yulan continent, for now, I cannot tell you. Fane said with a laugh. Linley looked at Fane questioningly. Why tell me this? Many saints didn't know about this. Why had Fane decided to tell him? Master instructed me to. Fane said. The war god. Linley truly didn't understand it. This was the second time the war god had assisted him. The first time, he had ordered Emperor Johann to choose warden, while this time, he had Fane tell him these secrets. Fane suddenly said, Linley, I hear you are quite powerful. Let's spar together. What do you say? Linley's eyes lit up. He immediately nodded. To train with someone on the level of Fane would definitely be beneficial. With a flip of his hand, Linley retrieved his blood-violet flexible sword. Leaping backwards, he retreated at high speed, while at the same time, those black scales covered his body, and those sharp, ferocious spikes appeared as well. Staring at Linley's cold, remorseless dark golden eyes, Fane sighed in praise. This variant dragon form of yours seems to be quite special. Come. Are you ready? Linley was already chanting the words to the wind shadow spell. Ready. Linley nodded. Looking at Linley, Fane recalled his master's instructions. He couldn't help but let out a resigned sigh. The reason he actively asked Linley to spar was also at the behest of the war god. According to the war god, it was time to let Linley have an idea as to how powerful the true experts of the continent were. Linley, I am extremely fast. Be careful. Fane said with a smile. In fact, Linley had chosen to use Blood Violet precisely because he had heard that Fane was fast. Blood Violet could reach an astonishing level of speed when used correctly. Let's begin. Fane's eyes lit up. Swish. An azure light suddenly flowed out from Fane's body, so powerful that it crackled and popped. Fane suddenly moved. Linley only felt an azure bolt of lightning suddenly streak towards him, at least twice as fast as Oliver's top speed. This terrifying speed rendered Linley completely unable to dodge. How frightening! Linley leapt backwards while hurriedly transforming Blood Violet into a tornado of movement, creating countless flashes of violet light which attacked that azure bolt of lightning. Profound truths of the wind, rippling wind. Linley didn't dare to use any other techniques. If he were to use the tempos of the wind instead, he probably wouldn't even be able to touch his opponent. Only by using this extremely fast technique could he just barely defend himself. Bam! A terrifying force struck onto the tip of Blood Violet. And then, Linley could clearly sense that azure bolt of lightning seemed to be transmitted through Blood Violet towards him, striking onto his black scales. Bang! It was as though a heavy warhammer had struck Linley's soul. Linley flew upwards, then immediately collapsed onto the floor, his entire body trembling as that azure lightning continued to ripple across Linley's body. His entire body felt paralyzed. Linley could sense that his muscles had lost all power, and he was barely able to remain conscious. After a long period of time, Linley finally regained full consciousness, and his forelimbs and his muscles slowly gained strength as well. Only now did Linley stand up, staring at Fane with disbelief. When he had dueled with Olivier, Linley had believed himself to be a peak stage saint, which meant that there should be very few people in the continent capable of defeating him. But now, after sparring with Fane, he realized that the difference between himself and Fane was extremely vast. Fane was twice as fast as him. Although that didn't sound like much, when engaging in a battle of speed, even a tiny advantage in speed meant the faster party held an advantage. Twice as fast, this was an unbridgeable gap. There was no way for him to counterattack. What's more, that lightning attack had stunned his very soul. Fane had actually held back from using his full power as he had not wished to injure Linley. What, you can't believe it? Fane sat back down on his wooden chair, laughing. Linley's mind was in a state of chaos. Although I knew that you are strong, Mr. Fane, I didn't expect, I couldn't resist at all. Mr. Fane, have you reached the deity level? No. I'm still just a peak stage saint. Fane shook his head. I'm also a peak stage saint. But, Linley couldn't understand. Laughing, Fane looked at Linley, then sighed with emotion. Linley, don't be fooled by the 4 words, peak stage saint level. In the eyes of experts such as us, the so-called peak stage doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is how much and how well you understand the laws. If you understand just the tiniest bit of the laws, then you are a peak stage saint in the eyes of ordinary people. Fane said disdainfully. Linley was startled. Right. That was indeed the case. When Linley's proficiency with the sword had reached the imposed level, that was merely borrowing the imposing force of the heavens and the earth. It didn't have anything to do with the laws. But the techniques he had developed based on the profound truths of the earth and the two techniques he had developed based on the profound truths of the wind, the rippling wind and tempos of the wind techniques, were indeed based on what he himself knew was but a tiny bit of understanding of the laws. According to what Master says, the elemental laws are as vast and boundless as the seas. If you've understood a single drop of water in those seas, you are a peak stage saint. If you've understood 100 drops of water, you are still a peak stage saint. But there is a huge difference between the two. A hint of loneliness could be seen on Fane's face. The elemental laws truly are vast and boundless. Supposedly, only after mastering 1% of a law can one reach the demigod stage. As for you and Olivier, you haven't even mastered 0.01%. Fane laughed as he glanced at Linley. Tell me. Although both of you have gained some insights, can your insights compare with the likes of those of us who have been training for thousands of years? Linley understood. No matter how much of a genius he was, he had spent less than 10 years meditating on the elemental laws. And Fane? He had been doing the same for thousands of years. Even if Fane wasn't as talented as him, how could his understanding of the laws be lower than Linley's? Linley, most of the famous saints in the world, such as that monolithic sword saint Hatesun, all became famous in the past millennium. Those true experts who have been training for thousands of years are all far past the point of caring about worldly fame. All of them are meditating and training in private. Linley was stunned. The monolithic sword saint had the reputation of being the most powerful saint, after all. Those lists and rankings that you might have heard about are nothing more than the experts which most people of the continent know about. Do you know how powerful the experts you are unaware of are? All of the lucky survivors of those battles from 5,000 years ago have been in training in secret since then. I refuse to believe that they would be willing to leave the plain of the Yulan continent. A hint of a smile was on Fane's face. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 22, The War God Summons. After saying these words, Fane turned and walked to the edge of the peak, allowing the wind to buffet his long robes. As for Linley, he continued to sit there, digesting what he had just learned. From the planar overseer, Hodan, Linley had learned that upon reaching the saint level, one could leave the plane of the Yulan continent. From Fane, Linley had learned that the Yulan continent's plane contained a major secret. The descent of those experts from other planes 5,000 years ago was also related to this mystery. Actually, it was already quite incredible that Linley had reached his current level at the tender age of 27. After all, those extremely powerful experts who were training in secret here in the Yulan continent had all been training for countless years. Whew! Linley let out a long breath. Why worry about so much? As long as my little brother and I are happy, and as long as I can exterminate the Radiant Church to avenge my parents, I should feel satisfied. Linley's current goals required that he reach a certain level of power. As for Linley himself, he truly enjoyed the path of training. The path of training was filled with obstacles, treacherous cliffs, and dangers. Many powerful people had lost their lives on this path. How few would actually reach the pinnacle? In the entire Yulan continent, there were only 5 deities. Ever since embarking on this path, Linley's goal was to stand at the very pinnacle of the Yulan continent. When he had embarked on this path as a youth, Linley had mentally prepared himself for the possibility of death and failure. When I was 6, because I was unable to train in Dragon Blood Battle Chi, my dream was to become a warrior of the 7th or 8th ranks. Afterwards, I not only became a Dragon Blood warrior, I also became the genius magus of the Holy Union. When I was young, I dreamed of eventually reaching the saint level. And now, I have become a peak stage saint. A hint of a smile was on Linley's lips. He had confidence. Fane? In the not-too-distant future, I will defeat him as well. Linley felt full of excitement. The more experts he surpassed and the greater the heights he achieved, the more satisfied he felt. What truly moved a person wasn't the results he gained, but the overcoming of setbacks and breakthroughs which one made on the path to success. Fane turned his head, looking at Linley. Rest here for now. At nightfall, I will take you to see Master. Fane smiled. The war god. Linley frowned. The war god wanted to personally meet with him. Naturally, Master has something he wishes to discuss with you. Just train here quietly for now. If there is anything you need, you can ask me. Fane didn't want to waste any more time on Linley. He walked to a stone that had already been polished smooth by him sitting on it countless times. Seating himself in the meditative stance, he closed his eyes. Linley stared at the meditating Fane. What exactly does the war god want? Linley didn't think about it for too long, as he also sat down and began to quietly meditate. Time passed. In the blink of an eye, the sun had set. Fane had been quietly meditating on the boulder. Suddenly, his body began to turn blurry, then disappeared from atop the boulder and reappeared next to it. Seeing that Linley had been quietly meditating this entire time, Fane couldn't help but secretly nod. True experts had to learn how to endure solitude. For example, Olivier had quietly meditated by himself atop that desolate mountain for 3 full years. Linley, in turn, had spent 3 painstaking years training in the mountain range of magical beasts. If one couldn't endure solitude, one's level of talent wouldn't make a difference. Linley, it is about time. Come with me to meet Master. Fane smiled. Linley opened his eyes as well, and immediately followed Fane. Fane walked to the side of the peak, and then began to fly downwards. Although Linley wasn't able to fly in human form, Linley leapt off the peak as well, allowing himself to gracefully drift downwards. Based on his mastery of the wind, Linley could slow down the rate of his descent. Soon, Fane landed at the halfway point down the mountain, and Linley landed as well. Come in with me. Fane headed straight for a natural tunnel. Linley felt rather puzzled. The war god actually lived in a tunnel? The tunnel curved left and right. After a long time, it ended in that deep, bottomless pit. Looking down into it, nothing but darkness could be seen. Let's go down. Fane jumped down directly, and Linley followed him. Whoosh! Whoosh! The two fell down at high speed. Linley was secretly shocked. We've definitely fallen for at least 2,000 meters. We're below the ground level by now. After falling for a long period of time, Fane and Linley gracefully floated to the ground. And then, Linley followed Fane as they continued to move through the tunnel, but as they did, the tunnel's temperature grew higher and higher. What a high temperature! Even Linley didn't dare to resist this terrifying heat with his body alone. He had to use his battle chi to protect the soles of his feet, and even his skin and head was covered by a layer of azurish black battle chi. Without the protection of his battle chi, most likely Linley would have caught on fire. The surrounding stone walls were all red with heat. After walking for a while, Linley saw a pitch-black stone door in front of him. Despite the extremely high temperature, the stone door hadn't turned even the slightest bit red. Clearly, it was made from no ordinary material. Whoosh! Gusts of hot air came from the other side of the door, carrying with it a faint, majestic presence. Faced with this majestic presence, Linley actually felt the sudden urge to bow down towards it. Master, I've brought Linley. Fane said respectfully. The war god. The war god was past this door. Linley had previously been calm, but now, his heart couldn't help but begin to beat faster. He was actually standing in front of one of the 6 ultimate experts of the Yulan continent, with only a stone door separating them. All right. Fane. You can leave now. A calm voice rang out. Yes, Master. Fane respectfully departed. Linley still stood there, quietly waiting for the war god to address him. Linley, 27 years old. An archmagus of the 9th rank who has already embarked on the path of understanding the laws, the war god's voice remained very calm. Linley, you aren't bad. Linley frowned. He could sense that the war god's voice seemed to be causing his soul to shudder. He had the sense that if the war god was to raise his voice a little bit, it would cause his soul to dissipate and collapse. Thank you for your praise, war god. Linley said humbly. I have already instructed Fane to tell you that which you need to know. Outside the door, there is a scarlet talisman of command. Take it. From today forward, you can be considered to be someone belonging to my side. The war god said calmly. Linley's heart shook. Considered to be someone belonging to the war god's side? He turned to look at the side of the door. Indeed, atop a flat rock, there was a scarlet-red talisman, which slowly rose into the air and began to fly towards Linley. Atop the talisman, a single engraved word could be seen, war. What is this war god thinking? I'll be considered as belonging to his side? Linley felt somewhat unhappy. The war god was forcibly recruiting him without even asking or negotiating with him. The war god's calm voice once more rang out, given your current level of power, you actually aren't yet qualified to receive this talisman. However, I believe you will reach that level sooner or later, which is why I am giving it to you in advance. Once you have this talisman, you will be qualified to investigate the secrets of the Yulan continent. The secrets of the Yulan continent. Linley said. When your human form reaches the saint level, or, when you defeat the monolithic sword saint, Hadesun, come find me again. By then, you will be qualified to know the secret. Only then would you truly be worthy of this talisman. The war god said calmly. From the war god's words, Linley could sense a certain lonely arrogance. In the war god's eyes, the current Linley wasn't even qualified to possess this talisman. In his eyes, Linley's power was indeed quite weak. Linley knew his own limits as well. War god. Linley said respectfully. You just said when my human form reaches the saint level, or when I defeat the monolithic sword saint. Does that mean you, war god, feel that only after my human form reaches the saint level will I be able to defeat the monolithic sword saint, Hadesun? The war god was momentarily silent. That monolithic sword saint is reputed to be the world's strongest saint. Although in the eyes of those other peak stage saints who lie hidden throughout the world, he doesn't live up to that reputation, Hadesun's current level of power can still be considered on par with those who have trained for thousands of years. Linley understood. As for reaching the saint level in your human form, if you remain unable to defeat Hadesun even after your human form reaches the saint level, then I will feel embarrassed on your ancestors' behalf. The war god said calmly. Linley laughed. Clearly, as far as the war god was concerned, once Linley's human form reached the saint level, Linley should definitely have surpassed Hadesun. But the war god seemed to currently feel that he was not yet able to overcome Hadesun. I refuse to believe that the war god knows about the true offensive power of my profound truths of the earth. Linley said to himself. Although the war god possessed divine power, he wasn't omniscient. Linley, let me offer you a word of advice. The war god suddenly said. War god, please speak. Linley's eyes lit up, and he immediately listened carefully. The war god had become a deity over 5,000 years ago. His advice could allow Linley to avoid many missteps. That calm voice rang out from behind the stone door. The elemental laws contain all sorts of truths. What you need to do is select a single path and follow it to its conclusion. It is best if you don't simultaneously train in multiple paths. Linley was startled. The elemental laws were indeed quite boundless. For example, Linley was currently analyzing two aspects of the elemental laws of wind. The first one was speed, the ultimate speed. The second was in single target sword attacks, such as his tempos of the wind. War God, why should I select just one path? Linley asked. Naturally, if you so desire, you can simultaneously analyze multiple aspects of the elemental laws. No one can force you not to do so. Whether or not you choose to take my advice is up to you. All right, I am finished. You can leave now. The war god said calmly. Linley hurriedly said, War God, I would like to ask, what sort of power or authority does this talisman confer upon me? Possessing this talisman is a symbol that you are qualified to enter the ranks of those who know the secrets of the Yulan continent. As for everything else, even if you die, I won't get involved. You must rely on yourself. Then War God, I would like to ask, right now, how many deities exist on the Yulan continent? Ever since meeting Fane, Linley had been wondering. Was it possible that the Yulan continent had more than just 5 deities? In total, there are 5. The war god said calmly. That Caesar broke through just a few years ago. Linley felt secretly relieved. The Yulan continent only had a few deities standing at its peak after all. War God, why did you give me this talisman? Previously, why did you help my younger brother? Linley asked. Linley had been puzzled about this the entire time. What sort of relationship did the war god have with him? As far as Linley could tell, the war god shouldn't need anything from him. After all, the war god was far more powerful than him. You ask too many questions. The war god's voice turned cold. You can go back now. For now, don't think about too many things. Focus on your training. After you defeat Hatesun, or after your human form reaches the saint level, come find me again. Hearing that the war god was starting to grow annoyed, Linley knew how he should act. War god, I bid you farewell then. Linley immediately left. Casting the wind shadow spell, Linley flew out of the deep pit, then exited the tunnel. After exiting the tunnel and allowing the mountain wind to buffet him, Linley let out a long breath. Despite being separated from the war god by a stone door, Linley still felt enormous pressure when speaking to the man. Someone belonging to his side. Linley stared at the scarlet talisman in his hand. The scarlet talisman occasionally flashed with golden light. Linley had never seen this sort of material before. With a flip of his hand, Linley stored the scarlet talisman into his interspatial ring, then headed down War God Mountain. On the way down, Linley was still thinking about the war god's final bit of advice. The elemental laws contain all sorts of truths. What you need to do is select a single path and follow it to its conclusion. His current focus was the throbbing pulse of the world. Linley shook his head. Without thinking about it any longer, he left War God Mountain and returned to the imperial capital. The next time Linley would return to War God Mountain, it would be after he defeated Hatesun, or when his human form reached the saint level. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 23, Pulse Guard. Count Warden's manor was very quiet. Zisler was in his room training, while Barker, his brothers, and Warden were all training in the wide training yard in the back of the manor. Rebecca, Lena, and Jen were chatting with the 7th princess, Nina. Wio. After finishing his training, Warden took a shower and changed into a set of clean clothes. Satisfied and content, Warden walked into his manor. He had never felt as happy as he currently felt. He was together with his big brother, and he was marrying Nina. Grandpa Hyrie and Hillman were also enjoying the quiet, comfortable lives of nobles. Father. Mother. If you two were still alive, you would definitely be very happy. Warden felt very satisfied, while at the same time, he felt very grateful to his big brother, Linley, who had brought all of this. Linley was the pillar of the clan. If it wasn't for Linley, would the emperor have given Nina to him? If it wasn't for Linley, in the capital, he would only be an ordinary person amongst the nobles, at best considered a genius. Warden glanced at the distant Grandpa Hyrie, who was reclining on a chair, idly sipping some fruit juice. "Grandpa Hyrie, where's my big brother?" Warden asked as he walked over. Housekeeper Hyrie looked up and smiled. "Oh, Warden. Young Master Linley left early in the morning. He still isn't back yet." Warden nodded. "You have nothing to be worried about. Your big brother is a saint. Young Master Warden, you need to train hard as well." Housekeeper Hyrie chortled. "Right." Warden nodded. "Grandpa Hyrie, next month is Oliver's duel against the monolithic sword saint. Will you go watch?" Warden laughed. "Naturally. How could I miss a duel between two saints?" Housekeeper Hyrie's eyes shone. "The monolithic sword saint is an expert amongst saints. This duel will definitely be exciting." Warden's eyes were also filled with excitement. "One day, I will be like my big brother, Olivier, and Hateson," Warden secretly decided. Just then, footsteps rang out. Linley appeared outside the courtyard. Seeing his big brother, Warden felt a warm feeling in his heart. He hurriedly went to welcome him. "Big bro, what took you so long to come back? Barker and I have finished our training. We are going to eat dinner soon. I went to see some people." Linley laughed. Linley didn't tell his little brother about his trip to War God Mountain. As Linley saw it, it was best not to inform his little brother about certain affairs of the Yulon continent. When his little brother reached the saint level, there would be plenty of time to tell him then. Within the rear of the courtyard was Linley's residence within the manor estate. The training grounds of the estate were extremely large, but Warden, Barker, and his brothers all needed a great deal of space as well. Thus, Linley usually trained by himself in his own manner. Whoosh! Whoosh! The wind blew about, scattering the fallen leaves on the floor, sending them dancing into the air. Linley's hair gently fluttered about with the wind as well. Linley was wielding the adamantine heavy sword, with the tip of the sword touching the ground. "I have already managed to generate 128 pulses of the vibrational attacks of the profound truths of the earth." During the 5 years he had spent at Cloud Peaks Village, Linley had already mastered the 100 layered waves during the 4th year. Linley had improved quite rapidly when he had advanced from 3 waves to 10, then from 10 to 100. But after 100 waves had been reached, Linley's rate of improvement had begun to drop. Despite all that time having passed, Linley had only reached 128 waves. With each breakthrough, Linley only managed to increase the number of waves by 1 or 2. "I wonder what the absolute limit is for the number of waves." Linley sat down into the meditative position. Through a The sound of the throbbing pulse of the world rang out within Linley's consciousness. That unique rhythm had a miraculous cadence, capable of causing someone to unconsciously be subsumed within it. Linley's muscles would occasionally expand or contract as they constantly vibrated, and wind arose out of nowhere around Linley. While meditating, Linley had previously noticed that his muscles would absorb earth elemental essence at an even faster pace when they were vibrating in pace with the rhythm of the earth's pulse, allowing his body to gain strength faster. "Ah!" Linley suddenly stood up, his eyes shining with terrifying light. The throbbing pulse of the world. The throbbing pulse of the world. Linley had suddenly recalled that technique the monolithic sword saint, Hateson, had used to block himself and Olivier. Hateson's body had suddenly been surrounded by layered waves of earth-colored elemental particles which had hammered against him in waves, forcing him backwards. Back then, I had the feeling that Hateson's defense seemed to have a very familiar quality about it. But at the time, I didn't understand it, and I didn't have time to analyze it. But now, Linley had a particular feeling, akin to seeing a bright moon which had been hidden behind a foggy veil gradually grow clearer in his mind. The throbbing pulse of the world isn't just vibrational waves. It can also become invisible, and it can also be transmitted through battle chi. It was as though there had been an opaque film covering this realization. Having pierced through the film, Linley now began to understand. Using pulses for defense. Haha, Earth-style magic has the pulsating guard forbidden level spell. It seems that they are based on the same principles. However, my pulse guard defense would only be used to protect myself. Linley's azurish black battle chi began to fill the area around him. No, that isn't how it works. Linley shut his eyes, allowing his heart to merge with the throbbing pulse of the world, while also tuning his dragon blood battle chi to the same tempo. He already understood the general principles, but actually applying them wasn't a simple task. Linley stood there in the middle of the courtyard as waves of azurish black battle chi suffused the area around him. The principle was actually quite simple. For example, a sheet of paper could easily be torn apart, but if the paper was folded 6 times into a braid, this braid of paper might be able to support up to 100 pounds of force. The same material, after being folded and braided, could support far more amounts of force. Battle chi was the same when used for defense. The same battle chi, when used in different ways, could defend against 10 times or even 100 times as much incoming force. The throbbing pulse of the world, in turn, was a very unique technique. The throbbing pulse of the world was just one of the paths within the laws of the earth. Linley had already reached a rather high level of understanding with regards to the throbbing pulse of the world. All he had to do now was to transform that understanding and use the same principles to create a pulse guard defense for himself. Since he already understood the principles, once he began to apply them, he would advance fairly quickly. Big bro, time to eat. Warden walked over, with Barker and his brothers behind him. The 5 of them had just finished training and then showering. But when they pushed the door open, they discovered Linley was surrounded by azurish black battle chi, which rolled out like waves of fog. Linley was hidden within those roiling waves of azurish black battle chi. Big bro. Lord. Warden, Barker, and the others all looked at each other. Although training was important, resting was as well. Don't bother the boss. Bibi, resting in the corner of the courtyard, ordered. It is dinner time. Big bro should take a rest. As he spoke, Warden headed towards Linley. Bibi and Haru glanced at each other, but didn't block him. Linley had already instructed Bibi and Haru not to go near him, as they would otherwise be injured by those waves. Time to let this little punk learn a lesson. Bibi secretly said to himself. Warden remained cautious. The battle chi around Linley was quite dense, but he was still fairly far away from Linley. The battle chi here was still rather sparse. How could Warden be truly worried about such a small amount of battle chi? But once he reached the edges of that azurish black battle chi, Warden suddenly felt a bizarre surge of energy strike at him. Bang! Warden was sent flying away. Warden had the sensation of being struck dozens of times in an instant, and each time he felt as though he had been struck by a meteor. Warden. Gates was the first to go forward and catch Warden. Warden, are you okay? Gates asked. I'm fine. Warden put his hand against his chest, the taste of blood in his mouth. He stared at Linley in disbelief. Big bro is releasing his battle chi, but I only touched the outermost perimeter. How could the power be so intense? Warden didn't believe it. The battle chi density closer to Linley was far higher, and it would most likely be far more dangerous as well. Warden, his lordship still hasn't stopped his training despite what just happened. Clearly, he must be at a critical juncture in his training. It's best if we don't disturb him. Barker said seriously. Warden nodded as well. I will order the guards to prevent anyone from disturbing him. No need. Haru and I will look after him. Bibi said disdainfully. You can leave now. If the boss doesn't finish his training, don't disturb him. Warden, Barker, and the others glanced at each other, then left. At the same time, Wharton and Barker instructed everyone else not to interrupt Linley's training. That night, at dinner, Jen, Nina, and the others were all astonished at how hard Linley was training. "He's training so hard that he won't even eat dinner. Big lunk, your big bro really is hard working," Nina murmured. But unexpectedly, the second day, Linley continued to train like this. The third day, the same, and just like that, one day after another went by. In the blink of an eye, over 10 days passed. May had arrived. In a few more days, it will be time for the duel between Olivier and Hateson. My big bro wouldn't be so caught up in his training that he will miss it, would he? Wharton said to Barker and his brothers. Wharton, Barker, and his brothers were all standing at the doorway to the courtyard. Every day, after they finished their training, they would come visit Linley. Linley hadn't changed at all, and he was still surrounded by that azurish black battle chi. Only, compared to 10 days past, that azurish black battle chi had actually shrunk quite a bit in area. I wonder how Big Brother's training is progressing. Wharton simply couldn't understand what he was seeing. Barker and his brothers shook their heads as well. In terms of level of understanding, Barker and his brothers weren't much better off than Wharton, and weren't able to understand much of anything regarding the elemental laws. Whew! The sound of an exhaling breath. Wharton and the Barker brothers, who had just turned and prepared to leave, all turned and looked back. Indeed, the azurish black battle chi had returned to Linley's body, and Linley was currently smiling while stretching. "Wharton, you are here as well." Linley laughed. "Big bro, you finally finished your training," Wharton said with excitement. "Oh, right. Wharton, how much time have I spent in training?" Linley laughed. "Almost 15 days. Today is May 1st. In 3 days, it will be May 4th. That night, Olivier and Hateson will be dueling," Wharton said quickly. 15 days. Linley was slightly startled. Actually, he had been totally concentrating on sensing the throbbing pulse of the world and constantly modifying and upgrading his pulse guard defense technique. He hadn't noticed time pass at all. Unexpectedly, after closing his eyes, 15 days had passed. Although I already had a high understanding of the throbbing pulse of the world and also understood the general principles behind the pulse guard, the actual development of the technique took 15 days. But Linley was actually quite satisfied. In the past, his battle chi armor was created through the application of battle chi in a very simple, crude manner. His current pulse guard defense used the same amount of battle chi, but was several dozen times stronger. But it seems my defense is different from Hateson's. When he was developing his technique, Linley had thought their techniques were the same. But after developing it, Linley realized that Hateson's defense was actually just a simple way of utilizing the throbbing pulse of the world. Hateson's understanding of the throbbing pulse of the world definitely was not as deep as Linley's own level of understanding. However, Hayden's defense was still frightfully powerful. This was because the throbbing pulse of the world was just a supportive part of Hateson's defense. His true power most likely lay in a different mystery of the laws of the earth. I wonder how my pure pulse guard defense technique matches up against Hateson's defense. Linley secretly wondered to himself. Big bro, what are you thinking about? Let's go eat dinner. Wharton called out. All right. Linley turned to look at Bibi and Haru. Bibi, Haru, let's go. Linley could guess that Bibi and Haru hadn't left his side during these past 15 days. And here I was thinking that the boss had forgotten about us. Bibi hopped onto Linley's shoulders, then pursed his lips. But boss, I've gotta say, although we haven't left the courtyard a single time during these past 10 or so days, those servants still delivered food to us every day. Alas, but tonight, nobody will deliver food. Bibi, will have to personally go get something to eat. Linley, Wharton, and Barker and his brothers all couldn't help but laugh. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 24, Olivier vs. Hatesun. Yulan Calendar, Year 10009. May 4th. This night was guaranteed to be anything but an ordinary night. Many of the people of the imperial capital were unable to sleep, and instead came to the outskirts of the city. Tonight, there were no stars in the sky, nor was there a bright moon. Instead, a thick layer of clouds covered the skies. Many citizens of the imperial capital had come with lit lanterns. In groups of 3 and 5, they awaited the arrival of this battle. Hey, third brother. Where do you think Lord Olivier and Lord Hatesun will hold their duel? Back then, when Lord Olivier challenged Lord Hatesun, he didn't clearly specify where they would fight. Only, that they would fight outside the city. But would it be outside the East Gate or the West Gate, or the South Gate, or the North Gate? Who knows? We have no choice but to quietly wait. This question nagged at many people. Many people had even arrived from different cities. Aside from a small number of people who were indifferent, and a number of magi, many people came. Nearly half the population of the city had come to watch this duel. When the tourists from other cities were added to their number, there were definitely millions of people here today. People were clustered outside all 4 of the gates of the imperial city. Nobody knew where the duel would take place. A large group of people from Count Warden's residence had gone as well, naturally. But Linley's group was able to easily tell where the duel was going to occur. This was because, the monolithic sword saint, Hatesun, was intentionally broadcasting his aura. The monolithic sword saint and Olivier had not clearly discussed where the duel would occur. Thus, Hatesun, the monolithic sword saint, had chosen to head to the Chan River, located north of the imperial capital. He stood in the air above the river, which was a wide one, measuring several hundred meters across at its widest. However, in terms of length, it could not compare to the Yulan River, and the Chan River actually joined the Yulan River at its end. Saints were extremely sensitive to the auras of others. If a saint-level battle were to occur at a specific location, saints from hundreds of kilometers away would sense it. Linley didn't transform, because Haru and Bibi could both clearly sense Hatesun's aura. Above Chan River, north of the city. Let's go now. The duel will occur there. Lord Hatesun is there. This information swept the city like a storm, quickly spreading to the people in the south, east, and west sides of the city. The millions of people congregating in those places swept towards the north like a flood. The vast majority of these people went cross-country towards the north. After all, there were far too many people here. If they all went by the streets of the capital, it would simply be too congested. There really are quite a number of people here. Linley, Warden, Barker, and the others all stared at the local scene in shock. Over 1 million people were standing on each side of Chan River. The 80,000 spectators in the Colosseum had already seemed like a sea of people. These million-plus spectators truly were a terrifying sight. Both sides of Chan River were filled with people. The worst part of it was, people were continuing to arrive from the east, west, and southern sides of the city. It was as though 3 massive deluges of water were continually adding to an already flooded area. The population of people here only continued to grow. So many people. Geez, that Olivier, why did he have to insist on the duel being 3 months later? If it had been half a month, the people from the other provinces wouldn't have been able to make it over. 3 months, even people from the Northwest Administrative Province have made their way over. Hillman shook his head. Zisler only snickered. The more the merrier. What an awesome spectacle. Zisler seemed to be treating this sight as a way to reminisce about the sight of his million-body strong army of undead. His million-body undead army was also an extremely incredible sight. More importantly, how can we get to the front? Are we going to just watch from afar? Seeing how tightly packed the people were in front of them, Housekeeper Hyrie didn't have the courage to try and squeeze through. Gates said delightedly, "That's easy. Let us 5 brothers lead the way and charge forward." Given their massive frames, they definitely were capable of pushing to the front. No rush. "Haven't you noticed that Emperor Johan's army has arrived?" Linley laughed. Indeed, just at this moment, the soldiers from the army had formed an orderly regiment and were marching in their direction. There were millions of ordinary commoners here, and less than 100,000 soldiers. But due to their tight formations and gleaming armor, the soldiers were able to awe and suppress the hearts of the commoners. Ruyaar. Gruel. The millions of spectators had magical beasts in their ranks as well, some of which had been tamed by powerful experts. The cries of magical beasts could be heard as well, alongside the unceasing chatter of the humans. It was a scene of utter chaos. Silence. A powerful voice rang out. "Everyone who is on a boat on Chan River, all of you, get to land, quickly. If you are on the river during Lord Hateson and Lord Oliver's battle, it is highly likely that your boats will be swamped by waves. People on the shores of Chan River, all of you move backwards by 10 meters. Nobody is permitted to go near the shores of the river. The army will maintain order here." The Imperial Army began to organize the viewers. The upper echelons of the Empire didn't dare to be careless. If something were to happen here, with millions of citizens present, it could be disastrous. A duel between 2 saints was a joyous occasion. They couldn't let it turn into a tragedy. "Lord Wharton, Lord Linley, please come with us." 2 soldiers walked over to them. Linley and Wharton grinned at each other. Emperor Johann had already made arrangements early on. After having those spectators retreat by 10 meters, the nobles of the empire headed to the front, although they also didn't go to the edges of the shores. With the Chan River spanning several hundred meters, there was plenty of space for the 2 saints to duel. In addition, both of the saints were dueling in mid-air. The nobles, based on their pre-arranged spots, lined up along the banks of Chan River. Having the best viewing locations, they prepared to watch this incredible spectacle. The commoners of the empire, seeing this, actually weren't angry. There was a huge gap between the worlds of the nobles and the commoners. Those who were able to become nobles were all people of talent, or who had rendered great merit to the nation. As long as you had ability, you could become a noble. The commoners of the empire actually held the nobles in great admiration, and they too wished to become nobles. The night wind was very cold, especially close to the river banks. The cold night wind caused many nobles to put on cloaks. On each side of the river, there were countless lit torches, illuminating the entire Chan River. However, in the air above Chan River, the monolithic sword saint, Hateson, stood there in mid-air alone. Olivier had yet to appear. "Master Linley, why hasn't Olivier appeared yet?" Emperor Johann said to Linley, who was now by his side. Emperor Johann had personally requested that Linley be seated next to him. The first reason was because he wanted to strengthen his relationship with Linley. The second was because with Linley by his side, he would be a bit safer while watching these 2 saints duel. "Don't be impatient, Your Imperial Majesty." Linley smiled. Hateson himself is still patiently waiting. "Your Imperial Majesty, you just need to quietly wait." "True." Emperor Johann smiled and nodded. In the air above Chan River, the monolithic sword saint, Hateson stood, dressed in his simple grey robes, and carrying that earth-colored heavy sword on his back. His eyes were shut. Suddenly, Hateson opened his eyes and stared to the east. A human blur was flying through the air at high speed. In the blink of an eye, a second human figure had arrived in the air above Chan River. It was Olivier, with his light shadow sword and the obsidian sword on his back. Today, Olivier was dressed in a long black robe. He looked very mysterious, and his white streaked hair was flowing freely in the breeze. "Lord Olivier has arrived." The millions who had been impatiently waiting suddenly let out an explosive shout of joy, filling the heavens like a physical wave of sound, causing the waters of Chan River to vibrate. One can imagine how loud millions of joyfully shouting voices were. Such a large number of people is really frightening. Warden sighed in amazement. Linley chuckled. In the air above them, Olivier and Hatesun hadn't been impacted in the slightest. They stared at each other in mid-air, with Olivier absolutely radiating an aura of battle. Hatesun, there is no way I will hold back in our duel today. If I accidentally kill you, you can't blame me. Olivier said coldly. The monolithic sword saint, Hatesun, laughed calmly as he glanced at Olivier. If you can kill me, then kill me. I definitely won't blame you. These words from these two powerful saints excited all the spectators to the point of trembling. Good heavens, was this going to be a life and death duel between two powerful saints? This duel between two saints was not a duel between ordinary saints. One was reputed to be the most powerful saint in the world, the monolithic sword saint. The other was the prodigy sword saint, who had come today to avenge his humiliating defeat of 6 years ago. This battle had filled everyone with excitement. After countless voices called out in excitement, everyone fell silent. Millions of people were present, but not a single person made any noise. The only thing that could be heard was the rustling of animals in the grass and the ceaseless blowing of the wind. Today, I have to get a good look at these two. Linley's eyes were as sharp as lightning, and what's more, the surrounding wind also served as his eyes. Despite the dark night, he could clearly see everything going on in the air between these two people who stood in mid-air several hundred meters above. According to what the war god had said, if Linley was capable of defeating Hatesun, that would mean he was qualified to know the secrets of the Yulon continent's plane. Hatesun was also a practitioner of the laws of the earth. Naturally, Linley would carefully observe this battle. As for Olivier, Linley had the sense that Olivier would also be a very powerful rival. Not just Linley. Bloomer, Kenyon, Castro, Lank, and other personal disciples of the war god had come over to watch this duel as well. After all, given Hatesun's power, even in the war god's college, only those disciples who had trained for thousands of years were capable of defeating him. 6 years ago, I wasn't a match for you at all. But today, Olivier laughed coldly as he drew the pitch-black obsidian sword from his back. You are starting off with the obsidian sword. Hatesun smiled slightly, but then his face slowly grew solemn. He didn't move at all, nor did he draw his sword. Oliver's face turned cold. Oh? 6 years ago, you didn't draw your sword. Today, you still think you won't need to draw your sword in order to defeat me? Olivier said coldly. If you have the ability, then force me to draw my sword. Hatesun said calmly. At the same time, a rippling wave of earth-colored battle chi surrounded Hatesun, causing him to seemingly be ensconced in a wave of earth. The two were separated by hundreds of meters of distance. Naturally, they spoke very loudly. All the millions of spectators could clearly hear their words. They were stunned. The monolithic sword saint, Hatesun, was so arrogant that he didn't even draw his sword. This Hatesun probably doesn't know that Oliver's obsidian sword includes a spiritual attack component alongside the physical attack. Linley didn't say anything. For Hatesun to dare act in such a way meant that he probably had reason to be confident. Linley actually didn't desire Hatesun to be killed by Olivier in one stroke. That would be too laughable. A dreamlike burst of white light flashed across the sky. With each streak of white light, an additional Olivier appeared in the sky. In the blink of an eye, 108 Oliviers appeared in mid-air. Using a technique like this? Olivier, can it be that you don't know that these techniques are useless against me? Hatesun stood there calmly in mid-air, ensconced by his earthen aura. Truly. Olivier laughed coldly. The strange thing was, those 108 Oliviers all moved at the same instant, charging towards the monolithic sword saint at the same time. Hatesun stood there, occasionally taking a single step, 1 step forward, 1 step back, left 1 step, right 1 step. Each movement was simple, but every single step allowed him to instantly travel several dozen meters, easily dodging every single one of Oliver's attacks. In terms of speed, Hatesun wasn't the slightest bit slower than Olivier. "Are you only capable of dodging?" Olivier shouted angrily. "Even if I were to fight you head-on, what would you be able to do?" Hatesun's calm voice rang out, then he returned to his original position, and then he actually retracted that earthen aura, allowing it to cling on his body. Whoosh! Those 108 Oliviers all combined into one. Oliver's body was covered by a gloomy, cold black light which seemed to devour all the lights around him. Oliver's face couldn't be clearly seen. HRM. Linley was surprised. The wind elemental essence couldn't even get near Olivier. Swish! A ray of devouring black light tore through the sky, striking directly at Hatesun. Hatesun stood there without moving, just using a simple punch to strike at it with his right fist. Bam! A sonic boom could be heard. That fist smashed down with the weight of a mountain, locking the surrounding air in place. Boom! Olivier finally appeared, his obsidian sword having chopped against Hatesun's fist. When Hatesun had punched out, Olivier actually hadn't tried to dodge, instead clashing his sword directly against it. That terrifying force from the punch passed through the obsidian sword, and with a terrifying splintering sound, Oliver's right arm contorted bizarrely, and he was knocked flying away by the power of that fist. As for Hatesun, he simply stood there, not moving. Hatesun seems to be in trouble. Linley carefully watched Hatesun. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 25, As Resilient as a Monolith. Splash! Olivier fell from the skies, slamming down into the waters of the river and kicking up an enormous geyser of water. Elder brother Bloomer, who had been watching at the riverbank, roared loudly, while at the same time charging directly towards the location in the water where Olivier had fallen. The millions of spectators were simply too numerous. Many of the people at the distant edges couldn't even see Olivier and the monolithic sword saint do battle. They could only overhear what the people in front were saying about what had just happened. Instantly, the millions of onlookers began to murmur. The difference between the two was simply too enormous. After all, Hatesun continued to stand there, as though he hadn't been injured at all. "Master Linley, Olivier lost," Emperor Johann said questioningly to Linley, by his side. "It is still too early to come to any conclusion." Linley was still staring up at the monolithic sword saint, Hatesun, who remained unmoving in mid-air. Linley said to himself, "I wonder what the results are for Hatesun, after he took on that attack head-on." The monolithic sword saint, Hatesun, was feeling extremely uncomfortable right now. He was extremely confident in his defense. He had roamed the Yulan continent for centuries now, and had never discovered anyone whose defense was stronger than his. Indeed, the obsidian sword's battle chi attack just now hadn't breached his defense in the slightest. However, when the obsidian sword had struck against his fist, a strange energy had easily penetrated past his vaunted defense and directly attacked his spirit, catching him off guard and stabbing viciously into his soul. He felt dizzy, and his head hurt so much it threatened to split apart. What a prodigy sword saint! He's even managed to develop a soul attack technique. After a moment, Hatesun regained his normal faculties. A young fellow who isn't even a half-century old was actually able to develop such a unique attack. Hatesun had tasted the sort of attack long ago. Soul attacks actually weren't that unique. For example, that eldest disciple of the war god, Fane, which Linley had met, had caused Linley to nearly faint when his lightning technique struck Linley. It had taken Linley quite a while to recover. This, too, was a form of soul-based attack. For example, the war god, who simply by speaking could cause someone's soul to shudder. The basic principle underlying soul-based attacks was quite simple: it was using one's spiritual energy to form an attack, then use it against the opponent's soul. Simply put, it was a spiritual attack. But although it was easy in theory, it was extremely difficult to do in practice. This was because spiritual energy, normally speaking, was very soft and malleable, like cotton. In order to do a spiritual attack, one had to transform the cotton into a sharp knife and use it to pierce the opponent's soul. Even most saints were only able to, at most, broadcast their spiritual energy. To use it to attack. To transform cotton into a knife? Difficult. But although it was difficult, those top-level experts who had been meditating on the elemental laws for a long time were capable of reaching that level. Haitsun had previously experienced this sort of soul-based attack. Oliver's spiritual energy is not very strong. Most likely, it is only on the level of a magus of the 8th rank. If he had the spiritual energy of an archmagus of the 9th rank, I would most likely be badly injured. If it was on the level of a grand mega saint, Haitsun laughed calmly. And then, Haitsun looked down into the Chan River. The Chan River had already regained its usual calm, but Olivier hadn't reappeared yet. Olivier, it seems you won't come out until you've finished repairing your arm. Haitsun laughed loudly, his voice shaking the heavens and reverberating throughout the land. Repairing his arm. Linley frowned, feeling surprised. Splash. A waterspout suddenly erupted from the river, and a black blur instantly shot up into the sky, once more standing in mid-air and staring at Haitsun. Oliver's damaged, twisted right arm had already returned to its normal condition. Olivier laughed coldly as he looked at Haitsun. Repairing an arm? Haitsun, even if you wanted to do such a thing, you wouldn't be able to. Light-style elemental essence is indeed miraculous. Some top-grade light-style magi are able to heal even the most grievous of wounds in an instant. However, in terms of defense and attack, the laws of light are inferior to the laws of the earth. Haitsun said confidently. The laws of the earth. Linley, too, trained in the laws of the earth. How can you possibly understand the subtle mysteries of the laws of light? Olivier said calmly. Haitsun, don't be overconfident. You didn't enjoy the feeling of my sword attack just now, did you? Haitsun frowned. Even an extremely powerful soul, upon receiving a soul-based attack, would suffer some wounds. With your soul damaged, will you be able to use 100% of your power? Olivier drew his light shadow sword with his left hand. He wielded his obsidian sword with his right hand, and his light shadow sword with his left. But I'm different. My arm was broken, but now it is healed. I'm not impacted in the slightest. Olivier dual-wielded his weapons, with a layer of dazzling white light covering his light shadow sword, while a layer of light-devouring cold black aura covered his obsidian sword. Two diametrically opposite forces. I want to see how you will deal with these two totally opposite forces. Oliver's eyes flashed with a cold look, and then he instantly transformed into a blaze of white light, as radiant as the sun, while at the same time, an unremarkable series of black lights flashed amidst his radiance. His speed suddenly increased to his utmost limit. The skies were once again filled with over 108 Oliviers. Clang. Haitsun, his face solemn, drew his earthen-colored heavy sword from his back. Ha ha, you've finally drawn your sword. Oliver's laughter shook the heavens. The countless spectators were all silent. Tonight, the night sky was covered by thick clouds, giving the battlefield a very gloomy aura. The spectators below even had the feeling that those dark, thick clouds were so close to Olivier and Haitsun that the two could touch the clouds just by raising their hands up. Boom. Boom. Terrifying sonic booms could be heard, as each time Olivier streaked through the sky at high speed, there would be an eardrum-rupturing sonic boom. The power of those sonic booms in the sky was so great that even those lit torches wavered, the flames pressing downwards from the pressure. Gales of wind caused everyone's hair to begin to float upwards. Countless people stared fixedly at this spectacle, hoping they could clearly see what was happening in the skies. Clang! Clang! Each time Oliver's dual swords clashed against Hatesun's earthen-colored heavy sword, those two light-style and darkness-style bursts of energy would strangely combine and attack together, seeking to break through Hatesun's attack. I didn't expect Olivier to have this sort of attack. Watching the battle with his head raised, Linley sighed secretly. He had to admit that Olivier was a genius. Light and darkness were two diametrically opposed types of elemental laws, but Olivier not only was able to train in both at the same time, he was also able to use them together in a very perfect manner. Ha ha! With each consecutive blow, Oliver's loud laughter rang out. Hatesun, what, are you just going to defend? Can it be that your soul is so wounded that you can't even attack? Boom! A terrifying thunderclap could suddenly be heard from the cloud-covered skies as an enormous bolt of lightning snaked down and struck the ground. A few seconds later, a torrential rain began to fall. In the blink of an eye, the world was covered with rain. Damn it, why does it have to rain now? The millions of spectators began to curse aloud. Most people had not brought any rain gear. With the rain suddenly descending upon them, they were transformed into a series of half-drowned chickens. However, these spectators continued to raise their heads high, staring at the duel in the skies. But thanks to the torrential rain, they couldn't even fully open their eyes as they stared upwards. How miserable! Many people were forced to take off their clothes and try to use their clothes to block some of the rain, so as to allow themselves to continue to stare upwards at this duel between absolute experts, which they might not have the chance to see again in 100 years. But despite this, the thick, heavy rain prevented them from seeing much of the battle in the skies. Right now, there were very few people who could clearly see what was going on in the skies. Linley, of course, was one of them. Master Linley, what is going on in the duel above? Emperor Johann asked Linley urgently. The imperial clan was still quite comfortable, because as soon as the rain had started, many large umbrellas were immediately deployed above them. Linley and the others all continued to sit comfortably dry under those umbrellas. Your Imperial Majesty, Hatesun continues to defend, while Olivier is wildly attacking him. However, it seems Olivier is totally unable to harm Hatesun. Linley smiled. But although that was what he said, in his heart, Linley was wondering to himself, every single one of Oliver's attacks contains a spiritual attack component. What sort of shape is Hatesun in, exactly? The torrential rain continued to fall. Those countless torches had been extinguished by the rain long ago. Right now, only the illuminating spells of a few light-style magi provided a bit of illumination in the area. Olivier, are you finished attacking? Hatesun said calmly. What? Olivier was suddenly stunned. Could it be that despite him having attacked for so long, he hadn't been able to injure Hatesun at all? His soul-based attack was his secret weapon. Wielding both swords in his hands, Olivier stood in mid-air, staring at Hatesun. Hatesun looked calmly at Olivier. When I received your first soul-based attack, I was indeed injured, but afterwards, since I was prepared for them, your attacks weren't able to harm me at all. Prepared? Olivier was stunned. How would one defend against a soul-based attack? Even Olivier himself had no idea. Olivier, you must understand, although soul-based attacks are special, you aren't the only one to use them. There have been quite a number of people in the history of the Yulan continent who have developed soul-based attacks, and I have tasted these attacks before as well. You are only a warrior, after all. Your spiritual energy is far too weak. Most likely, you are only at the level of a magus of the 8th rank. If you were at the 9th rank, then perhaps I would be injured even if I prepared for your attacks. If that were the case, my victory today wouldn't be this easy. The monolithic sword saint, Hatesun, looked calmly at Olivier. What? Olivier found it difficult to accept this. This was an unbelievably heavy blow to him. Olivier, you are already quite impressive, to have reached this level before even a half-century of life. Hatesun gently stroked the earthen-colored heavy blade in his hands. Now, prepare to receive my most powerful attack. Consider this my way of showing respect for your power. As to whether you will live or die, that will be up to heaven. Olivier felt that this was very laughable. Whether he would live or die. Hatesun, don't be too arrogant. If you have the ability to do so, then come and kill me. Enough talk. Oliver's body once more began to blaze with that brilliant white light, intermixed with that dark black light. Half his body was covered with pure white light. The other half, pitch black. Come. Oliver's black and white hair flowed freely in the air. He radiated light in every direction, and the power of those two swords in his hands reached a crescendo as well. Wielding his earthen-colored heavy sword in one hand, the monolithic sword saint, Hatesun, had a smile on his face. This is my most powerful attack. The name of the attack is, World Breaker. If you are to die, I wish you to die with full knowledge of what killed you. Hatesun had already forgotten how many so-called geniuses had died to him. Was Olivier the sixth, or the seventh? He had forgotten. But Hatesun knew that if a genius were to die, then they would no longer be a genius. Elder brother. Bloomer roared mightily into the skies. Be careful. Tears streamed down from Bloomer's eyes, but given the torrential rain, no one could tell if they were tears or just raindrops. Although the torrential rain was thunderously loud, powerful experts were still able to clearly hear the words between these two combatants. Hearing his younger brother's shout, ensconced in black and white light, the corner of Oliver's lips actually tugged upwards, forming a perfect curve. Surrounded by black and white light, Olivier was very dazzling to the eye. To the below spectators, Olivier seemed to be a bright star shining in the night rain. Boom! Olivier suddenly moved, and a terrifying sonic boom could be heard as he transformed into a dazzling line of light which streaked towards the monolithic sword saint, Hatesun. Hey arg! Hatesun let out a loud yet calm shout. The light shadow sword and the obsidian sword seemed to have merged together, and the dark light and the white light crackled and swirled together, as Olivier, his face fierce, viciously swung down both swords at close range for one final blow. But as Hatesun swung his giant earthen sword towards him, it seemed to carry the power to shatter the entire world. Bang! A terrifying loud collision sound could be heard, as though the world itself had exploded. At the same time, a terrifying gust of hurricane-like wind blasted in every direction as the torrential rain fell down in sheets, carried by the force of that blast of wind. Splash! A human figure covered with dim black and white light fell at high speed into the Chan River, and on the surface of the Chan River, a large amount of a red-colored liquid could be seen. Book 9, His Fame Shakes the World, Chapter 26, A Time and a Place. In turn, Hatesun's body had been knocked flying far away at high speed by this terrifying clashing force. Only after flying backwards for nearly 100 meters did Hatesun stabilize himself. And a hint of blood leaked out from Hatesun's mouth. Hatesun wiped the blood away, staring down at the Chan River. What a fine prodigy sword saint! His final attack truly was powerful. Hatesun murmured to himself. At a do-or-die moment, Oliver's final attack had reached a new level of power, and had actually broken through Hatesun's defense and struck Hatesun's body, causing him to be injured. Rumble! The torrential rain continued to fall non-stop, and on the surface of Chan River, the waves of water roiled about. Quickly, that scarlet-red color atop the surface of the river dissipated and disappeared from sight. A deathly silence. Everyone had fallen silent, and the people at the two banks of the river stared into the Chan River. Everyone wanted to know, had that glorious prodigy sword saint died, just like that? Elder brother. Bloomer didn't hesitate at all. Shedding bitter tears of pain, he threw himself directly into the turbid waters of the Chan River. Master Linley, did Olivier die? Emperor Johann was worried. Linley shook his head. I'm not sure either. As he spoke, Linley lowered his head to glance at Bibi, who looked upwards at Linley with resignation. Boss, Oliver's aura is extremely weak right now, and he isn't even breathing. I can only detect the barest hint of life in him. It seems he really is about to die. The countless spectators were all discussing this situation in hushed tones, wondering if Olivier had truly died. But everyone still remembered Oliver's dazzling final blow. Plop! Water sprayed everywhere. Carrying a body, Bloomer rushed out of the water. Linley could instantly tell that Oliver's face was drained of all blood and was totally white, and his lips were ashen as well. He was no longer breathing. Only by using spiritual essence to probe him could one sense that Olivier was still alive. Move, move. Carrying the light shadow sword, the obsidian sword, and his older brother Olivier in his arms, Bloomer charged directly towards the direction of Emperor Johann. Bloomer's eyes were filled with tears. Your Imperial Majesty, where are the healers? Quick, quick! Bloomer shouted frantically. For this battle, Emperor Johann had prepared in advance for the most exalted Archmagus of light magic of the 9th rank in the palace to come. Mr. Anderson Te, quick, save Olivier. Emperor Johann immediately said. A silver-haired old man immediately walked out from behind Emperor Johann and hurried towards Oliver's prone body. His hands glowing with white light, he touched Oliver's body. Soon, color began to quickly reappear in Oliver's face. How is he? How is my older brother? Bloomer said frantically. Although Bloomer was very stubborn and very cold towards others, in Bloomer's heart, he loved Olivier like a father. His older brother had raised him ever since he was young. To Bloomer, there was nobody more important than his older brother. Don't be hasty. Just now, all I did was heal the simpler wounds Lord Olivier has sustained. I need to use more healing magic to address his internal injuries. The silver-haired old man nodded as he spoke, then immediately began to mumble the words to a magic spell. Bloomer watched, feeling anxious and nervous, but he didn't dare to interrupt the work of this light-style Archmagus. Soon, a starry light entered Oliver's body, and the wounds on Oliver's body began to rapidly heal. The efficacy of this healing magic was quite astonishing. HRM. The silver-haired old man shook his head, puzzled. What is it? Bloomer asked frantically. The silver-haired old man shook his head, frowning. Lord Oliver's body has been totally healed. His external injuries, his organs, and his broken bones are all restored. But Lord Olivier didn't wake up. This. Linley was carefully inspecting Olivier as well. Oliver's soul has been wounded. Bibi said mentally to Linley. I can feel that his spirit is extremely weak right now. Just at this moment, the grey-robed Hatesun flew over slowly from the sky, agilely and gracefully coming to a halt in front of Emperor Johann. Hatesun. Bloomer stared hatefully at Hatesun. His one and only older brother, his one and only family member. Bloomer felt boundless hatred towards Hatesun. If it wasn't for the fact that he was far weaker than him, Bloomer probably would have charged straight for him. Stop staring at me. Your older brother's spirit was heavily wounded, and he is hovering at the point of life and death, but that isn't because of me. When executing his final attack, your older brother seemed to utilize some sort of forbidden technique to attack me, hoping to take me down with him. Hatesun's face was rather pale as well. Forbidden technique. Bloomer frowned. Suddenly, he remembered. A while ago, he wanted to learn the obsidian sword technique from his elder brother, but Olivier had instructed to focus on learning the light shadow sword technique, and not to train in the diametrically opposite obsidian sword technique. Could it be that there really is some sort of taboo preventing people from utilizing two diametrically opposite elemental laws at the same time? Bloomer lowered his head to stare at his older brother. Oliver's face was ruddy, and his body was clearly in peak condition. But he still didn't wake up, and his spiritual aura was extremely weak, as though it could be extinguished at any moment. Lord Olivier lost. His brother carried his corpse out. Alas, the prodigy sword saint has died. Who said he died? Maybe he's just unconscious due to his injury. No matter what happened, Lord Hadesun, the monolithic sword saint, seems to be fine, and even flew down from the skies. Clearly, he is far stronger than Lord Olivier. Those millions of spectators were all discussing this battle. Although the skies were filled with torrential rain, it couldn't douse their burning ardor. Everyone was filled with excitement at what they had just seen. Regardless of whether Olivier was dead or just passed out from his injuries, one thing was certain. The victor of this duel was the monolithic sword saint, Hadesun. This result was one which the vast majority had predicted. After all, Hadesun had been famous for too long, and was reputed to be the most powerful saint alive. He had never been defeated. It was very normal for him to be the victor of this duel. Everyone would have been stunned if Hadesun had lost. The flood of spectators slowly began to melt away. Many began to head towards the imperial capital, while others headed towards some villages on the outskirts of the city. The people slowly left, but the soldiers still stood guard. "My elder brother won't die," Bloomer said coldly. And then, carrying his elder brother's body, he ordered his servants to carry the light shadow and obsidian swords and follow him. Bloomer left, carrying his older brother in his arms. "I hope Olivier can make it past this disaster," Emperor Johann sighed. Right now, Emperor Johann was surrounded by over 1,000 people. These people were all nobles. Many of them wished to know if Olivier was alive or dead. Lord Hadesun truly is powerful. Once again, he won easily. A distant noble's voice rang out respectfully. Hadesun laughed calmly. And then Hadesun looked at Linley. With a loud laugh, he said, "Actually, compared to Olivier, I'd rather have a competition against Master Linley." A stunned silence. Everyone was shocked. Hadesun had just completed a major duel with Olivier, and now he wanted to challenge Linley to a duel? Linley was silent for a moment, then spoke. "Hadesun, what do you mean by this?" Hadesun smiled. "Last time at the Colosseum, you and Olivier didn't finish your duel, but Olivier had drawn his obsidian sword, and you had prepared your adamantine heavy sword. I remember at that time, you had said that your adamantine heavy sword techniques were based on the laws of the earth, right?" "Indeed." Linley nodded. "I, too, am a person who studies the laws of the earth. I imagine that if we were to engage in a competition, it would be of great benefit to both of us in our attempts to break through to a higher level of understanding." Hadesun looked at Linley. "Linley, I'd like to invite you to spar. Would you accept?" Neither the surrounding nobles nor Emperor Johann dared to make a sound. One was reputedly the strongest saint alive. The other was a saint who was a genius the likes of which the world had never seen. "Big brother," Warden couldn't help but speak out. Linley turned to glance at his little brother. He chuckled. Warden, in his heart, was frantic and angry. He thought to himself, this Hadesun really is despicable. He just finished beating Olivier to the brink of death. Does he now want to kill my big brother as well? Is it because he saw both my big brother and Olivier are both geniuses, and are afraid that in the future, they would threaten his status? Warden wasn't the only person thinking this. Many of the people present were thinking this as well. After all, Linley and Olivier were both dazzling geniuses. One had been beaten to the point where whether or not he would survive was at question. And now, Hadesun invited Linley to spar? Many people naturally questioned his real motives. "What, you refuse?" Hadesun asked with a laugh. Linley looked at Hadesun, a smile on his face. "Name a time," and name a place. Hatesun was startled. He immediately understood that this meant Linley was accepting his challenge. I've already competed today against Olivier and am not in peak form. How about this? 3 months from now, on August 4th, in the air above Mt Jiao, east of the city. Let's have our competition there. Fine. Linley smiled and nodded. Linley wanted to duel with Hatesun as well. He had just begun to understand this pulse guard defense technique. Combining that with his profound truths of the earth attack, Linley didn't think that he would be easily defeated. After all, he not only was protected by the pulse guard defense, he also was protected by his draconic scales. With such powerful defenses, most likely it would be hard to say if Hatesun's was better or his own was better. Since this is the case, then your Imperial Majesty, Linley, I'll bid you farewell. Hatesun nodded to each of them. Then transformed into a grey streak of light as he flew away into the sky. Big bro, Warden ran over frantically. I'm fine. Victory and defeat is yet to be determined. Linley smiled confidently, and then he led his people back towards their residence. As for those nobles and the members of the imperial clan, they were all engaged in endless speculation. After a while though, all of them returned back to the imperial capital as well under the cover of rain. The Chan River once more regained its normal peacefulness. Only the mess left behind at the river banks gave testament to the earlier excitement. At the place where the Chan River and the Yulon River intersected, a 6-story tall enormous ship was sailing from the Yulon River into the Chan River. A row of knights were standing in a neat row on the deck. Many of those powerful knights had magical beasts as well. Ordinary people did not have access to magical beasts, for so many of the knights to have magical beasts meant that the status of the person on this ship was quite extraordinary. When we arrive at the Chan River, we'll be only 3 days out from the imperial capital of the O'Brien Empire. Unfortunately, we'll have missed the duel between the prodigy sword saint, Olivier, and Lord Hatesun. The warriors on the ship's deck were chatting amongst each other. Right at this time, a man with white streaked hair came out onto the top deck. He seemed to be a middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s. By his side was a brown-furred bear that looked charmingly naive. This bear was roughly as tall as a person was, and seemed very cute. Growl. Growl. Master. I really don't feel comfortable here on the water. Let's fly instead. That charmingly naive-seeming bear said to the middle-aged man. I know you hate water. The middle-aged man laughed as he walked to the chain-link side of the boat, staring down into the waves. Your Honor. Seeing the middle-aged man, the soldiers on the ship deck all said respectfully. Just at this time, a tall, golden-haired beautiful woman came walking out with a smile. Laughing, she headed towards the middle-aged man. Teacher, we've already arrived at the Chan River. We should be arriving at the O'Brien Empire soon. The middle-aged man laughed as he glanced at the golden-haired woman. Ha ha. Indeed we are. Delia, I think you are even more impatient than I am.